Chapter 499. Nie Tian no longer hesitated. Elder Yi only had 5 days. He had to achieve a breakthrough within 5 days. Swoosh! With a leap, Nie Tian stepped onto a stone pillar on the altar. After a few leaps, he arrived at the edge of the cauldron in the blink of an eye. Only now did he realize that the cauldron was actually so big. It was at least 10 meters in circumference and contained almost liquefied heaven and earth spiritual energy. Just by feeling this aura, it made people feel incomparably comfortable. Everyone, come up! Nie Tian waved his hand, indicating for the others to come up. The heaven-earth spirit energy contained in the cauldron was too dense. Even after hundreds of thousands of years, the power contained within was still immeasurable. However, there was a limit to the amount of heaven-earth spirit energy a martial artist could absorb. This was related to the martial artist's strength, martial physique, and talent. According to Nie Tian's estimation, with his current strength at the 4th level of the Titan realm, the power of 12 million stars, the enhancement of the 9 polarity war god incantation, and the 9-star dragon vein form, he would be able to absorb enough spiritual power of heaven and earth to advance to the 9th level of the Titan realm. Once the heaven-earth spirit energy in the cauldron was absorbed, it wouldn't be able to maintain its current state and would spread uncontrollably. Therefore, even if the other martial artists didn't absorb it, it would dissipate into the air. Everyone didn't hesitate and came to the edge of the cauldron. Nie Tian spread out his hands and essence force gushed out. His fingers circled in the air a few times and a small Tier 2 array was formed. He said, "This array will prevent the heaven-earth spirit energy from spreading too quickly. Everyone, try your best to absorb the energy in the cauldron. How much you can absorb will depend on your own abilities." Everyone nodded. In front of them was the densest heaven-earth spirit energy that was almost liquefied. Cultivating in such a place for a day was equivalent to cultivating in the outside world. The heaven and earth spiritual energy that assaulted their faces made them feel as if every inch of their skin and every piece of their bones were refreshed. Plop! Nie Tian was the first to jump into the cauldron. It was as though he was jumping into water. There were even colorful and breathtaking spirit energy waves. Seeing this, the others didn't hesitate and jumped in one after another. The moment he entered the medicinal pool, Nie Tian felt all the pores on his body open up. The heaven and earth spiritual energy was like a raging wave, violently rushing into all the meridians in his body. Ouch! In the next moment, everyone felt a piercing pain. Although the heaven and earth spiritual energy was good, if it was too dense, it would also be a great test for a martial artist's martial body. It was because Cher was too weak that she could not absorb the energy within the cauldron. Everyone gritted their teeth. Although their expressions were twisted with pain, no one cried out. This was a rare opportunity that could only be chanced upon. No one wanted to miss it. Outside the cave, Cher came to Xiaoxi's side. The latter was dejected, still angry that Cher had revealed the secret of the sacrificial altar to Nie Tian. Xiao, don't be angry. Nie Tian said that he will break the secluded forest restriction. When that time comes, we can leave this place. Cher jumped onto the sleeping bag between the 2 horns of the giant snake and said with a serious expression. Xiaoxi's big head shook a few times. He was very distrustful of Nie Tian. He was a spiritual beast with intelligence. The heaven's fate secluded forest restriction was left behind by ancient people. How could a human like Nie Tian break it? There were so many demons in the chaotic abyss, and there was no lack of experts among them. Even they could not do anything to the secluded forest restriction. It was even more impossible for Nie Tian to succeed. Xiaoxi, he won't lie to me. Cher's small face was very serious as she nodded. At this time, Corpse Demon Monarch walked over. He had already helped Elder Yi to temporarily suppress the devil sealing curse. However, he could only suppress it for 5 days. After 5 days, without the destiny spirit ginseng, he would have no other way. In order to suppress the devil sealing curse, corpse demon monarch's originally fat cat body shrunk, turning back into the size of a mouse. Big guy, you're so big, why are you so stingy? My master said that he can break the restriction, so he will definitely be able to. He just needs some time. Unexpectedly, corpse demon monarch could understand Xi's words. He swaggered over with the demeanor of an elder. Unfortunately, his demeanor as an elder was soon ruined by snow. Oh, little mouse, you're so cute. Cher looked at the green body and red eyes of the spirit-devouring mouse. Her face was full of joy. She jumped down from the giant snake and grabbed the spirit-devouring mouse. Holding it with both hands, she asked curiously, "Little mouse, how come you can speak human language?" "Cute?" Corpse demon monarch crossed his two small claws in front of his chest and said with a very disdainful look, "This monarch is the #1 demon monarch in the 9 underworlds, second only to His Majesty the Demon Emperor. Being cute is simply an insult to this monarch." "Wow, little mouse, you're even cuter when you boast." Cher was even more happy. She poked Corpse Demon Monarch's little belly and laughed like silver bells. Corpse Demon Monarch wanted to vomit 3 liters of blood, but he could only endure. He shyly glanced at the little mouse that loved to boast, then went back to sleep. "Little mouse, can you tell me, what kind of person is Tian?" Cher asked while pulling Corpse Demon Monarch's little beard. Cough, cough. Corpse Demon Monarch coughed twice and put on an arrogant look and said, "Speaking of my wise and great master, he is too amazing. He was once the #1 war god in the heaven realm, the peak of sword Tao in the heaven realm. His name was illustrious and shook the entire heaven realm. Master, he once..." Corpse Demon Monarch talked non-stop, praising Tian to the point that no one in the past would be able to surpass him in the future. "Little mouse, is what you said true? You're not lying, right?" Cher's clear eyes flickered, half believing and half doubting. "Of course it's true, why would this monarch lie?" Corpse Demon Monarch said proudly. "That Tian challenged the heaven realm's 9 emperors alone, did he win or lose in the end?" Cher asked seriously. "Do you even need to ask? Of course he won, the heaven realm's 9 emperors are nothing in front of Master, small ants, Master could kill them all with a wave of his hand." Corpse Demon Monarch said nonchalantly. The heaven realm's 9 emperors were killed by Tian with a wave of his hand. This boast was indeed a bit too big. Then how did Tian become like this? How come he couldn't even defeat Shixi? Cher frowned and asked. "About this, it's an accident, an accident." Corpse Demon Monarch didn't wait for Cher to speak again. He laughed and said, "This monarch is tired, I'm going to sleep for a while. There are still many amazing deeds of Master, I'll tell you about them in the future. Let's stop here for today." "All right." Cher nodded helplessly, obviously she wasn't satisfied. In the blink of an eye, 4 days passed. Tian and the others still hadn't come out from the ancient altar. Cher had to go check on them many times every day, afraid that something might happen to them. Fortunately, Corpse Demon Monarch was glib all day long, praising Tian to the skies. Cher was also very happy to hear it. Inside the cave, inside the medicinal cauldron in the center of the ancient altar, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth had become very sparse, almost all of it had been absorbed. Chapter 500. The giant cauldron suddenly released a surge of sword energy. A figure shot up into the sky like a sharp sword. A terrifying aura filled the air and filled the entire space around the altar. The others were awakened and looked at the figure in the sky in astonishment. Teacher has condensed the sword energy." Duanmu Lu was the first to react and shouted. "Let's leave this place first," Tang 13 said as she jumped out of the cauldron and left the altar. The others followed suit. Above the altar and the medicinal cauldron, the dense sword intent became more and more violent. Even the entire altar was shaking slightly from the agitation. The figure in the sky was like a sword god descending to the world. Waves of sword energy gushed out and his aura became stronger. After a while, the surging sword energy slowly stabilized and condensed into a sword shadow that wrapped around Nie Tian's body and was absorbed by him. The moment all the sword energy entered his body, Nie Tian's eyes opened and his lips curled into a faint smile. His entire body was like an unsheathed sword, sharp and aggressive. In 4 days, Nie Tian's strength had soared. From the 4th level giant to the 9th level giant, he had increased his strength by 5 levels. To increase his strength by 5 levels in 4 days, Nie Tian would be regarded as a monster if this were to spread. To others, it would only take 4 days to absorb the energy from the cauldron. But to Nie Tian, who had the chaotic original coffin, it took him 40 days. Therefore, not only did he absorb a large amount of heaven and earth spiritual qi, but he also refined all of it. This was how his strength soared. Reaching the 9th level giant, Nie Tian had awakened the power of 100 million stars in his body. The power of 100 million stars was a terrifying number. It made Nie Tian's strength soar. At this time, he could casually wave his hand and he could release the power of 10 dragons. Even an ordinary 5th level true essence realm martial artist would not be able to release the power of 10 dragons. More importantly, Nie Tian sensed that the origin star stone was shining with dazzling starlight, and a magnificent picture was gradually revealed. It was actually a boundless net, a totem that covered the sky. In the Star River domain, a mighty voice reverberated endlessly. This was the totem above the first celestial river in the Star River domain, called the Sky Shrouding Totem. It was endless, majestic and distant, giving people a feeling of boundlessness. It seemed that as long as Nie Tian carefully perceived it, his divine soul would inexplicably surge. There were 9 heavenly rivers in the Star River domain, which also meant that there were 9 great totems, each representing the power of a heavenly river. At this time, the first layer of the Sky River totem only had an outline. It was unknown how much more star power he needed to awaken before he could truly activate the totem. Nie Tian tried to communicate with the Shrouding Heaven totem, but he couldn't activate it, so he couldn't use the totem's power. Compared to the 900 billion stars in the origin star stone, 100 million stars was still too little. It was far from enough to activate the Sky Shrouding Totem. Fortunately, Nie Tian's swordsmanship had advanced further at this time. His sword heart had condensed the sword intent, which was enough for him to use the first move of the advanced 3 moves of the Ao sword skill, Sword Conquering God. The Ao sword skill was a peerless sword skill that surpassed the heaven stage. It integrated the rules of heaven and earth, using 3 as nodes, and was divided into 3 basic moves, 3 intermediate moves, and 3 advanced moves. In addition, there were 3 extreme moves, 3 forbidden moves, and 3 major sword formations. Unfortunately, Nie Tian's current strength was still too weak, and he couldn't fully exert the true power of the Ao sword skill. At this time, everyone looked at Nie Tian in midair with dull eyes and indescribable shock in their hearts. Nie Tian's advancement in strength was too terrifying. Everyone had also cultivated in the medicinal cauldron on the altar for 4 days, but the improvement of others was very limited. But Nie Tian had forcibly increased his strength by 5 levels, which was simply incredible. Duanmu Lu's strength advanced by 1 level, reaching the 5th level of the giant spirit. Tang 13 advanced by 2 levels, reaching the 4th level of the giant spirit. Rui Qianyu advanced by 1 level, reaching the 3rd level of the true element. Because Gu Wuyo and Zhan Xiaoi were at the crucial 9th level of the giant spirit, they didn't advance and maintained their original strength. The 2 guards of the Battle Cloud sect, Zhan and Zhan Qi, advanced by 1 level, reaching the 6th level of the true element. One of the reasons why Nie Tian's strength had risen so quickly was because his martial body was stronger than others. With the addition of his 9-star dragon vein body, even Rainy Qianye, who was in the true energy realm, was no match for him. Thus, he was able to absorb more heaven and earth spiritual energy than others. Another more important reason was that he had the chaotic original coffin, which gave him enough time to refine the spiritual energy he absorbed. Others could only absorb the spiritual energy but didn't have the time to completely refine it. Therefore, in the following period of time, the strength of Duanmulu and the others would increase rapidly. It was absolutely no problem for them to advance several levels in a few months, while Nye Tian's advancement would be relatively slower. It's been 4 days. I wonder how Elder Yi is doing. Thinking of Elder Yi, Nye Tian's figure flashed and flew out of the cave, ignoring the shocked gazes of the others. Master, you're out. Corpse Lord Demon King was currently bragging to Cher. When he saw Nye Tian coming out, he couldn't hide his excitement and shouted excitedly. Previously, he had been staying in the chaotic original coffin. These few days alone outside, Corpse Lord Demon King felt a little uneasy. Nye Tian, you've become stronger. From the 4th level of the giant spirit to the 9th level of the giant spirit. Amazing! Cher stood up with her hands behind her back. Her exquisite face bloomed with a smile that lit up the entire Rainbow Valley. Hiss! Xiao Xiao woke up at this moment. She lifted her eyelids and glanced at Nye Tian with an annoyed look. Cher, thank you. Nye Tian nodded slightly, but he was secretly surprised. Cher was only in the Essence Meridian realm, but she could actually see through his strength so easily. It was really strange. He didn't think too much about it. Cher was originally a mysterious and unfathomable girl. It was normal for her to have some strange abilities. Corpse Lord, how's Elder Yi? Corpse Lord Demon King had already returned to the chaotic original coffin. Nye Tian asked. Corpse Lord Demon King had been suppressing the devil sealing curse for Elder Yi every day. At this moment, his body was very pitiful. He was only the size of a baby's fist and was even slimmer than the Mirage Snow Fox. Master, don't worry. Elder Ye's devil sealing curse is temporarily suppressed, but it can only last for a day. Corpse Lord Demon King said with a worried face. Master, have you thought of how to get the Destiny Spirit Ginseng? Corpse Lord Demon King had long noticed that Nye Tian's strength had advanced to the 9th level of the giant spirit realm. Nye Tian had a heaven-defying spirit like the chaotic original coffin. It wasn't strange for him to have such an increase in strength after cultivating in the ancient altar for 40 days. However, even if Nye Tian's strength reached the 9th level of the giant spirit realm, it was impossible for him to get the Destiny Spirit Ginseng. Not to mention the fact that the Destiny Spirit Beast had a heaven-defying spirit beast protecting it. Even the rank 7 spirit array couldn't be broken. Chapter 501. Nye Tian nodded, his face filled with deep concern. He had long decided to get the Destiny Spirit Ginseng, but he had yet to figure out how to get it. To get the Destiny Spirit Ginseng, the 2 biggest problems in front of him were the Spirit Ginseng's protective array and the spiky devil scorpion. With his current strength, unless he reached the Heavenly Emperor realm, he would not be able to fight the spiky devil scorpion head-on. Otherwise, he would not be able to get close to the Destiny Spirit Ginseng. Right, let's see what good stuff Diaojingda has on him. Nye Tian suddenly remembered that when he killed Diaojingda, he took the latter's spatial ring. The spatial ring originally had Diaojingda's soul imprint, but since he was dead, the soul imprint disappeared automatically. Nye Tian used his divine sense to explore the ring and saw many martial arts and martial skill scrolls, a gold card from the Martial Assembly Business Union, and hundreds of elixirs. His divine sense swept through these elixirs one by one. When it came into contact with a scarlet elixir, his eyes narrowed and he blurted out, Rank 6 Yuan Burst Elixir. Nye Tian took out the elixir and examined it carefully. It was indeed a rank 6 Yuan Burst Elixir. Yuan Burst Elixir was a very common elixir. The first batch of elixirs Nye Tian refined in the 3000 small worlds was Yuan Burst Elixir. However, He only refined low-grade yuan burst elixir, while the one in his hand was a rank 6 yuan burst elixir. Diao Zhengde was a rank 6 alchemist, so it was not strange for him to have a rank 6 yuan burst elixir. The medicinal power of a rank 6 yuan burst elixir was abnormally violent. Normally, only spirit wheel realm experts dared to take it, and after taking it, they would need to rest for at least 3 months to recover. Nie Tian had once taken a rank 3 yuan burst elixir during Tyrant Cloud Academy's freshman martial meet. After that, he had to rest for 3 days to recover. The rank 6 yuan burst elixir in his hand could not be withstood by an ordinary true element realm martial artist. It was highly likely that their yuan meridians would burst and they would explode to death. Nie Tian was currently in the 9th level giant spirit realm, but his eyes were burning with desire as he looked at the rank 6 yuan burst elixir. Master, this is a level 6 yuan burst pill. You can't be thinking of eating it, right? Corpse Demon Monarch gulped in fright. The medicinal strength of the Tier 6 explosive yuan pill was too strong. Even if it was Nie Tian, he was also unable to withstand the berserk medicinal strength. Nie Tian gazed at Elder Yi, who was on the verge of death, and he made up his mind and said in a low voice, "Elder Yi saved me many times, and he even didn't hesitate to damage his own cultivation to save my life. A mere 6th grade essence explosion pill is nothing." At this time, Nie Tian had already made up his mind in his heart. The Tier 6 yuan burst pill was worth a try. His martial body was not something an ordinary martial artist could compare to. It was far stronger than an ordinary martial artist. Perhaps he could really withstand the berserk power of the rank 6 yuan burst pill. The 6th order yuan burst pill was enough to instantly raise Nie Tian's strength to the 5th stage of the true element boundary. As long as his cultivation reached the true element boundary 5th stage, he might be able to activate the shrouding heaven totem, and with it, Nie Tian would be able to go all out. Thinking of this, Nie Tian directly placed the Tier 6 yuan burst pill under his tongue, ready to swallow it at any time. He continued to rummage through the space ring, and suddenly, he saw a strange scroll. There was no aura coming from it, and it was neither a martial technique nor a fire-controlling art. "What's this?" Nie Tian was slightly surprised. He opened the scroll, and there were actually dozens of names on it, with time, location, and some other things marked on it. This is the name list of all Diao Zhengde's subordinates in the Alchemist Guild. Nie Tian immediately understood. This scroll recorded Diao Zhengde's subordinates, and without a doubt, these people were also from the Ling Xian Tian Pavilion. I didn't expect there to be so many assassins from the Ling Xian Tian Pavilion in the Alchemist Guild. What is the Ling Xian Tian Pavilion trying to do? Nie Tian's heart trembled slightly, and he quickly put away the name list. Right now, the most urgent thing was to obtain the fateful spirit ginseng. Everything else had to be put aside. Now that Nie Tian had the Tier 6 yuan burst pill, he had a little more confidence, but it was still far from enough. "Nie Tian, get out here!" Just as Nie Tian was still pondering, a sharp and furious roar suddenly sounded, accompanied by a violent rage. "Wan Qirong!" Recognizing the owner by the sound, Nie Tian's mouth curled into a cold smile, and he said brazenly, "Come on, I'll start with you guys." Hiss! Xiao also reacted at this moment, and its huge body suddenly stood up, and suddenly rushed out, arriving outside the canyon. Nie Tian and the rest immediately sprinted out, and saw 6 figures. It was Wan Qirong and the rest. Wan Qirong, Tawny, Mo Feng, Qiu Wuheng, Mo Lei, Qiu Xiaofeng, the 6 of them were all here. What a powerful aura! The 6 of them were shocked by Xiu's aura, and even the strongest Wan Qirong revealed a horrified expression. Xiu's aura was too valiant, and even Wan Qirong was unable to contend with it. Hiss! Xiu spat out its tongue, and let out a threatening sound, warning them to leave immediately. When Wan Qirong saw Nie Tian walk out, her eyes were filled with unwillingness. They spent several days, and finally found Nie Tian's aura. At this moment, the other party was right in front of them, so how could they be willing to leave just like that? But the giant snake that suddenly appeared in front of them was too terrifying, and it seemed to be protecting Nie Tian. Wan Qirong's eyes were filled with suspicion. She couldn't figure out how Nie Tian could subdue such a terrifying giant snake. Nie Tian, do you want to hide in the canyon forever? Unwilling in her heart, Wan Qirong shouted provocatively. Did I hide? Nie Tian took a step forward, and his whole body emitted a cold aura, and it was getting stronger and stronger. And, did you become stronger? Only now did Wan Qirong realize that in just a few days, Nie Tian's strength had risen from the 4th to the 9th level of the Titan spirit realm. This was unbelievable. Canyon, there must be a rare treasure in the canyon, Wan Qirong said in her heart, and her eyes couldn't help looking into the canyon. At a certain moment, she caught a glimpse of an unfamiliar alluring figure, and even she was amazed by this figure's otherworldly beauty. This figure, of course, was Cher. At this time, the others also noticed Cher's existence, and their expressions turned sluggish, and their breathing became slightly hurried. Cher was too beautiful. Even if Rui Qianyu stood in front of her, it couldn't cover up her elegance. Wan Qirong was sure that the reason why Nie Tian's strength increased so rapidly was because he had obtained a rare treasure in the canyon. Otherwise, how could a martial artist directly increase his strength by 5 levels in a few days, and subvert the understanding of martial Tao? Nie Tian, what kind of skill is it to hide behind others? If you have the guts, then fight with me. If you can't even beat me, what qualifications do you have to challenge Mou? At this time, a person came out from behind Mo Feng and shouted insolently. Mo Lei. Nie Tian knew this person. He was the young genius of the Mo family who entered the abyss this time. Although he was only 25 or 26 years old, he was already at the 5th level of True Essence Realm, and his talent was amazing. When Mo Lei was at the Rising Dragon platform, he was able to reach the 8th floor, which was already considered good. The reason why Nie Tian paid attention to this person was because of his other identity, Mou's brother. That's right, Mo Lei was Mou's brother, but his talent and strength were worse than Mou's by more than a level. Chapter 502. At this time, Mo Lei suddenly stood up. He wanted to use Nie Tian to fulfill his own reputation as a genius. Nie Tian was in the limelight, and even in Shumi Spirit Capital, many people knew this name. As Mou's elder brother, Mo Lei's strength and talent had always been suppressed by the latter, so he was naturally unconvinced. If he could kill Nie Tian, the person who challenged Mou, in advance, it could be regarded as exhilarating in front of Mou. And there was a more important reason. Mo Rushi, another genius who had recently risen in the Mo family, was unexpectedly thinking about Nie Tian. From Mo Lei's point of view, Mo Rushi, a woman with monstrous talent and a peerless beauty, should be together with a spirit space capital genius like him, instead of thinking about Nie Tian, a little loach that came out of nowhere, every day. All these made Mo Lei feel extreme hatred for Nie Tian. Even in the abyss of chaos, Nie Tian also stole everyone's limelight, which made Mo Lei feel inexplicable anger towards him. Mo Lei knew that Nie Tian's strength was strange, but he believed that a giant spirit realm martial artist could never be his opponent, a 5th-level True Essence realm martial artist. If Mo Lei saw Nie Tian's performance in the Mark of Dusk enchantment, he would not have such a thought. Hiss! In the face of Mo Lei's provocation, the giant snake suddenly retreated. Its head swayed a few times, and it flicked its tongue, as if saying something. Master, the big snake said that as long as you can kill these people in front of you, he will believe that you have the ability to break the barrier of the forest. The corpse demon Monarch understood the words of the snake, and said to Nie Tian, "Good." Nie Tian nodded heavily, his whole body releasing overbearing confidence. Nie Tian, although Mo Lei is not as good as Mou, He is also a famous genius in Shumi Spirit Capital. Don't be careless. Tang 13 reminded Nietian. Mo Lei's reputation in Shumi Spirit Capital was naturally not as good as Mou's, but he was also the 7th genius on the Shumi Spirit Capital genius list. He was much stronger than Qiu Xiaofeng and Tang Xiao. Moreover, his strength just happened to be at the 5th level true essence, so he was not suppressed by the Serene Woods restriction. Don't worry, Nie Tian replied via voice transmission, and then his gaze swept over Mo Lei before he laughed in disdain. You want to challenge me? Mo Lei sensed Nie Tian's contempt and became even more furious in his heart. He roared, You think you're worthy of my challenge? I just want to prove that you're trash. Mo Rushi must be blind to have fallen for you. When Nie Tian heard the other party mention Mo Rushi, his eyes instantly turned cold. His whole body exuded a sharp killing intent. He suddenly raised a finger and said coldly, I only need one sword to kill you. Nie Tian had once been questioned by Mo Feng and Mou, and now, even Mo Lei wanted to question him. The people of the Mo clan were really the same, arrogant and conceited, as if only the people of the Mo clan were geniuses in this world. Nie Tian would use actions today to tell him what was called a true genius. At this time, Nie Tian already discovered that Mo Feng, Qiu Wuheng, and the rest had a timid appearance like treading on thin ice in front of Wan Qirong. Clearly, these few people were already tamed by the latter, thoroughly reduced to barking dogs. As for the other martial artists, they were definitely all dead already. The moment Wan Qirong's identity was exposed, it was destined that those martial artists would die without a doubt. Arrogant. Mo Lei's eyes trembled, his gaze revealing gloomy killing intent as he clamored, Nie Tian, you'll pay the price for your arrogance right away, a heavy price. Is that so? Nie Tianling smiled coldly, the contempt in his eyes even more intense. He directly swallowed the Tier 6 exploding yuan pill under his tongue. His throat rolled. The others thought that he swallowed his saliva because he was nervous. The Tier 6 exploding yuan pill's medicinal effect, from start to finish, could last for half an hour. This time was enough for Nie Tian. The instant the exploding yuan pill entered his body, the berserk medicinal efficacy assaulted his entire body like a flood and ferocious beast. Even if Nie Tian's temperament was tough, his brows still furrowed, his face showing a savage look, his forehead dripping with sweat. But he suppressed the aura in his entire body and did not erupt. Humph humph. When Mo Lei saw Nie Tian sweating profusely, he could not resist sneering and said, Is this your courage? I haven't even made a move and you're already scared out of your wit. Wan Qirong, Mo Feng, and the rest also sensed something and frowned one after another. Mo Lei, kill him. Wan Qirong thought that Nie Tian suffered some kind of injury and was currently trying his best to suppress the power within his body. Perhaps it was the backlash from swallowing a rare treasure. It was a great opportunity to make a move. Mo Lei, do it. Mo Feng shouted at the same time. Mo Lei nodded and no longer hesitated. A black halberd appeared in his hand. It was his original spirit, the Thunder Halberd. When the Thunder Halberd appeared, Mo Lei immediately revealed his Titan true body. The 30-meter-long black body was like a black stone pillar that pierced the sky, causing the surrounding dark clouds to surge. The heaven and earth within a few thousand meters suddenly became dark and gloomy, and a violent aura radiated out, sending chills down everyone's spines. The strength of a warrior in the 5th level of true essence was indeed not to be trifled with. Tang 13 and the others had a dignified look in their eyes. Even if Nie Tian's strength increased to the 9th level of the Titan true body, could he really fight with Mo Lei? At this time, Nie Tian's body swayed. The medicinal power of the 6th level yuan burst pill had reached its peak, and he was suffering from extreme pain. All the meridians in his body were mercilessly attacked, as if they would explode at any moment. The swelling feeling of power brought him a tearing pain. At the same time, the 10th Yuan meridian continuously surged with star energy, alleviating the tyrannical medicinal power of the Yuan burst pill. Nie Tian could faintly feel that there were 9 giant dragons roaring in his body, turning into an invisible force that wrapped around his body, stabilizing his martial body and strengthening his meridians. At the most critical moment, the 10th Yuan meridian and the 9-star dragon meridian had resisted the tyrannical impact of the 6th-level Yuan burst pill. But the others didn't know what had happened to Nie Tian, and they all had a look of shock on their faces. Die! Mo Lei's gaze swept over, and when he saw Nie Tian's expression of pain and ferociousness, he didn't hesitate any longer. The lightning halberd smashed down like a lofty mountain, and it actually emanated the shocking energy of lightning. Countless bolts of violet lightning shot out violently, and they tore through the dark space before condensing into a blade of lightning in midair that pressed down towards Nie Tian. In the midst of the raging waves, Nie Tian's body was like a boulder, not moving an inch. Even his eyes were closed. Seeing this scene, everyone's hearts were in their throats, unable to calm down anymore. Giving up resistance is a wise choice for you. Mo Lei's arrogant laughter resounded. It was as if he could already see the scene of Nie Tian's soul being destroyed. Is that so? At this time, Nie Tian's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. A monstrous sword intent rose up, and the brilliance of the sword overflowed in all directions. Colorful and dazzling, it was incomparably dazzling. However, within the most dazzling brilliance, was the coldest killing intent. Bang! A muffled sound rang out, and the boundless sword intent directly broke through the lightning blade. Chapter 503. Nie Tian's aura erupted like a volcano. 1 second it was as calm as water, and the next it was as violent as fire. The sword intent soared to the sky, the terrifying aura. No one could imagine how a young warrior could explode with such terrifying power. Mo Lei finally realized something was wrong, but it was too late. The shock in his eyes gradually turned into fear. In the next moment, the shocking sword intent condensed into a beautiful and merciless sword shadow. It cut through the darkness of the surrounding space, pierced through the dark clouds, and came crashing down. Boom! The violent sword fell coldly. In a flash of blood, it directly ended Mo Lei's life. One sword, it was really just one sword. To kill Mo Lei, Nie Tian only used one sword. Moreover, he didn't use a sword at all. It was just the power of one sword that erupted from his sword intent. Everyone was stunned. The shock in their hearts was written all over their faces. Whether it was Wan Qirong, Tang 13, or the others, none of them thought this would happen. Mo Lei was a warrior at the 5th level of true element. He couldn't even block a sword attack from Nie Tian. This was too shocking and unacceptable. Everyone's expression froze for a few seconds before they finally reacted. His strength. He has reached the 6th level of true element. Mo Feng was the first to notice something was wrong. He pointed at Nie Tian, his voice trembling and his eyes filled with shock. Wan Qirong and the others froze at the same time. They suddenly realized it was true. The muscles on their faces twitched. They couldn't believe such a strange thing had happened. In just an instant, from the 9th level of the giant soul realm to the 6th level of true element. This was absolutely impossible. Even if one ate a treasure, it was impossible to instantly increase one's strength. There were very few things that could instantly increase one's strength. The most common was the Yuan burst pill. Yuan burst pill. Wan Qirong suddenly thought of this possibility. Looking at Nie Tian's aura again, it really was the aura of the Yuan burst pill. From the 9th level of the giant soul realm to the 6th level of true element, what rank of Yuan burst pill did Nie Tian take? Rank 5? Rank 6? Or rank 7? He only had the strength of a 9th level giant spirit, so how could he withstand the medicinal power of a high-grade, explosive Yuan pill? Wan Qirong suddenly thought of Nie Tian's ferocious and terrifying face just now. He was actually suppressing the power of the Yuan burst pill in his body. This madman, he actually consumed the explosive Yuan pill when he was fighting Mo Lei. Perhaps only a madman like Nie Tian would do such a crazy thing. He actually consumed a rank 6 Yuan burst pill. Tawny immediately saw through the clues, and a piercingly cold, killing intent flashed in her eyes. Mo Feng and Qiu Wuheng were suddenly stunned. Never had they imagined that Nie Tian even dared to eat a rank 6 essence explosion pill. Even Mo Feng and Qiu Wuheng, who were at the first level of the divine wheel realm, might not be able to withstand the terrifying medicinal power of the 6th-stage Yuan burst pill. Brother Mo, let's attack together. Kill him. Qiu Wuheng glanced at Mo Feng and wanted to join forces to kill Nie Tian. Hearing Qiu Wuhen's words, Nie Tian suddenly remembered that it was Qiu Wuhen who called on Mo Feng and Wu Mang to join forces to severely injure Elder Yi. Immediately, he couldn't suppress the anger in his heart and he roared, "Qiu Wuhen, I will kill you first." With just you? Qiu Wuhen smiled coldly and was very disdainful of Nie Tian. Even if the other party consumed the Yuan burst pill, he didn't believe that the latter could truly exert the strength of a 6th-level true element realm martial artist. Die. Nie Tian didn't want to talk nonsense with Qiu Wuhen. He spat out a word from between his teeth, and the killing intent in his body spread out, enveloping the surroundings, and his aura was like a rainbow. If it wasn't for Qiu Wuhen's shamelessness, Elder Yi wouldn't have become like this. This person had to take responsibility for Elder Ye's matter. Godly sword. Taking a step forward, the aura on Nie Tian's body became stronger and stronger, and a monstrous sword intent surged out. The absolute heaven slash appeared in his hand, and with a slash, endless sword intent surged out like rolling waves. Boom! A magnificent sword shadow appeared in the air, and the sword chi erupted in an instant. The majestic aura pressed down like a thunderbolt mountain. Qiu Wuhen was alarmed, and he struck out with his palm. Although the aura was not weak, it was a bit inferior to Nie Tian's. Under the secluded forest restriction, both Nie Tian and Qiu Wuhen only had the strength of 5th-level true element realm. However, Nie Tian was a swordsman who had condensed sword intent, and the proud sword art was a super heaven rank sword art. One of the advanced 3 styles, godly sword, had already begun to take shape. At this time, it was not something that Qiu Wuhen could resist. Swish! The bright sword light fell, neat and tidy, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. On the ground, a frightening deep mark appeared, and a pool of blood flowed. On both sides there were bloody corpses that had been cut into 2. Under the sword, Qiu Wuhen didn't have the slightest strength to fight back, and was directly cut into 2 by Nie Tian. Hiss! Hiss! The terrifying scene made even the giant snake stick out its tongue, and its huge head stagnated in the air. The others were even more astonished, and the shock in their hearts could not be any greater. One sword strike killed Mo Lei, and another sword strike killed Qiu Wuhen. Nie Tian's strength was outrageous. After a long while, everyone came to their senses, and their expressions eased a lot. In fact, it was normal to think about it. When Nie Tian was at the 4th-level giant spirit realm, he could fight against a true element realm martial artist. Now, with the support of the Yuan burst pill, his strength had reached the 6th-level true element realm. Even if he could only exert the strength of a 5th-level true element realm, he could definitely fight against a 9th-level true element realm martial artist. Although Qiu Wuhen was a spirit wheel realm martial artist, under the secluded forest restriction, he couldn't exert the true strength of a spirit wheel realm martial artist. Therefore, his true combat strength was not much stronger than Mo Lei. It's your turn. Nie Tian killed Qiu Wuhen with one sword strike. His killing intent was strong and his aura was sharp. His cold eyes locked on Mo Feng and he spoke coldly. Mo Feng's eyes trembled and his throat rolled. His face was as pale as paper. He couldn't help but retreat and hide behind Wan Qirong. His strength was comparable to Chiuwuhin's. If the latter couldn't withstand Nie Tian's sword strike, how could he? Humph! A cold sneer sounded. Nie Tian's eyes were full of contempt and he shouted, "A dignified elder of the Mo family is actually a coward?" Mo Feng looked at Nie Tian with deep fear, and he didn't dare to look him in the eye. At this time, his life was the most important, and being ridiculed was not fatal. "City Lord Wan, your dog doesn't dare to fight. Is it your turn to fight?" Nie Tian took another step forward, stared at Wan Qirong, and smiled coldly. Elder Yi was seriously injured by Wan Qirong, so this person was also an enemy who must die. Trash! Wan Qirong glared at Mo Feng fiercely, and then immediately looked at Nie Tian. She said cold, "With the power obtained from the rank 6 Yuan burst pill, I want to see how long you can last." Although Nie Tian killed Chiuwuhin with one sword strike, for Wan Qirong, this strength was far from enough. The strength of others was suppressed by the restriction, but her 6-word ghost language was very strange. The suppression was relatively small, and it allowed her to exert the strength of a rank 9 true element martial artist. Chapter 504. Is that so? Although Wan Qirong was insidious, she was also quite arrogant. Being provoked by Nie Tian like this, of course she was angry. Her delicate body shook slightly, and her gloomy eyes flickered with murderous intent. Wan Qirong's lips curled up devilishly. She used the 6-word ghost language again. The 6 dark golden words seemed to have a life of their own as they surrounded her. A strange and cold aura spread out and collided with Nie Tian's sword aura. "Nie Tian, I wonder how many strikes you will need to kill me?" Wan Qirong's eyes flickered. Her gaze shifted from the long sword in Nie Tian's hand, and there was a hint of playfulness in her eyes. In her opinion, the current Nie Tian was still a lamb waiting to be slaughtered even if he took the 6th-tier spirit burst pill. "I will still kill you with one strike." Nie Tian's lips curled up with overbearing confidence, and his eyes were filled with extreme cold disdain. Killing Mo Lei with one strike, killing Chiuwuhin with one strike, and killing Wan Qirong with another strike. Nie Tian's tone was overbearing and confident, but in Wan Qirong's ears, it was full of sarcasm. It turned out that in Nie Tian's eyes, there was no difference between Wan Qirong, Mo Lei, and Chiuwuhin. They were all killed with one strike. Insolence! In the face of Nie Tian's unscrupulous provocation, Wan Qirong's body shook a little. She was obviously furious, and her cold eyes were filled with suppressed anger. She was the dignified deputy city lord of Chaos City, the deputy pavilion master of Ling Xian Pavilion, and a strong practitioner at the 6th tier of the Divine Wheel. Even in the 3,000 small worlds, she was definitely a well-known strong practitioner. Now that she was being looked down upon and mocked by a teenager, how could she not be angry? "Brat, I want to see how you are going to kill me with one strike." Wan Qirong's exquisite face was extremely angry. Under the extreme coldness, there was a hint of malevolence. "All right." Nie Tian let out a deep roar and the aura around his body skyrocketed. He shouted, "Then you better watch carefully." Sword chi surged and sword intent surged. Nie Tian lightly tapped the ground with his feet and leapt tens of meters into the air. The 10 yuan meridians in his body were madly circulating. All the pressure he had endured before would be unleashed in this one sword strike. "Is this all you've got?" Wan Qirong's figure floated up, facing Nie Tian in midair. Even though the latter's momentum was unstoppable, she didn't put him in her eyes at all. A true element boundary 5th stage cultivator with the help of the Yuan burst pill couldn't possibly be terrifying. Everyone looked up at the 2 silhouettes in the air with solemn expressions. No one knew what would happen next. "Little mouse, I hope what you said about Nie Tian is true." Cher's watery eyes stared at Nie Tian as she whispered. At this moment, even she couldn't help but worry for Nie Tian. Rui Qianyu's eyes were like fire, flashing slightly. She seemed to be ready to make a move at the critical moment. Tang 13, on the other hand, was even more meticulous. Not only did she pay attention to Nie Tian and Wan Qirong, she also reminded the two guards of the Battle Cloud sect to keep an eye on Mo Feng and Tawny. In a battle between powerhouses, life and death could be decided in a single thought. In midair, Nie Tian's aura grew stronger and stronger. The surging sword intent around him formed a sword barrier, exuding a threatening aura. Go die. At this moment, Wan Qirong finally reacted. Frowning slightly, she no longer hesitated. With a roar, she attacked. Shwa! A streak of black light shot out of the lock ghost shadow like a sharp arrow. However, with a loud bang, it failed to penetrate Nie Tian's sword intent shield. What a terrifying sword intent! The corner of Wan Qirong's lips twitched and her eyes flashed with fear. She didn't think that Nie Tian's sword intent would be so strong that it could block her ghost language spell. The ghost language spell was extremely evil. Normal sword intents couldn't block it. Even Elder Ye's knife intent was at a disadvantage against the ghost language spell. Why does his sword intent contain the power of the Scar of the Dusk? Wan Qirong sensed something amiss from the surging sword intent around her. She couldn't help but glance at Tawny. Her perception was right. Nie Tian's sword intent not only contained the proud sword intent but also the star's sword intent. The power of the stars in the star's sword intent was the same power as Tawny's Scar of the Dusk. Because of this, the power of the stars could help Tawny activate the Scar of the Dusk. Reverse. / Wan Qirong shouted coldly. The reverse ghost language spell and the / ghost language spell attacked at the same time. Two black rays spiraled out like two spiritual snakes entangled together and pounced over. Good timing! Nie Tian roared. The sword intent around him exploded and shot out. At the same time, the sword absolute heaven / down. The sword ray rolled out and condensed into a huge sword shadow. Wan Qirong suddenly felt a huge force rushing towards her, forcing her to defend passively. Only now did she know that Nie Tian's strength was so strange that it couldn't be measured by the standards of ordinary cultivators. Without any unnecessary movements, Nie Tian slashed down with his sword, using his strongest sword intent to directly defeat Wan Qirong. At the instant the sword shadow condensed, the astral soul steel in Nie Tian's body also reacted. Two astral souls instantly merged into his body, and boundless energy erupted once again. The remaining two third-grade astral souls on the astral soul steel, triple devil wind / and heart-shattering ghost hand, were used at the same time. In midair, three resplendent white rays of light and a black-blooded ghost hand appeared one after another, bringing with them a huge force as they attacked. Wan Qirong saw how powerful Nie Tian's sword was. She actually didn't dare to retaliate. The 6 words of ghost language spell released rays of black light, forming an impenetrable barrier around her. The lines of ghost language were like layers of barriers. Within them, there were ghostly shadows flashing. It was very strange. When the crowd saw that Nie Tian's sword actually forced Wan Qirong to defend passively, their faces were filled with shock. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, who would believe that the dignified Deputy City Lord of Chaos City, a 6th-tier Divine Will cultivator, would actually be forced to defend passively by Nie Tian, a young man in the 9th tier of the Giant Spirit Realm. Bang! Immediately after, the shocking sword shadow attacked at the first instant. The sword shadow fused with 2 sword intents filled the air with the power of sword chi. Rings of sword brilliance bloomed like a lotus flower, incomparably resplendent, but with the strongest murderous intent. Buzz! As the sword shadow landed, the ghost language barrier around Wan Qirong's body actually let out a deafening sound, as though a golden bell had been struck by a huge hammer. A deep depression immediately appeared on the barrier, and in the center, there was actually a spider web-like crack. Wan Qirong's choice to defend was a grave mistake. The power of the 2 sword intents was not something she could imagine. If she used the 6 words of ghost language spell to attack, The most likely outcome would be that she and Nie Tian would both be injured. But she didn't do so, choosing to defend passively. It was precisely her who sounded the death knell. The sword's shadow dispersed, clashing with the power of ghost language spell. A cold and austere aura filled the space of nearly 1,000 meters. Boom, boom, boom. However, after Nie Tian's killer move, there was still another killer move. The third-tier demonic wind third slash of the astral soul once again struck the depression on the ghost language barrier. Chapter 505. Bang! The ghost word shield collapsed, and the 6 dark golden characters of the 6-word ghost word shield also exploded at the same time. The smell of blood immediately filled the air. Among the countless fragments, there seemed to be ghosts flickering, and heart-wrenching screams of pain resounded in the space, as if many people were suffering from endless torture. What an evil cultivation method! Nie Tian frowned slightly, calmed his heart, and turned a deaf ear to the screams of the ghosts in the space. The moment the ghost word shield collapsed, Wan Qirong's eyes suddenly shrank, and the horror in her eyes reached the extreme, and instantly turned into despair. She never thought that Nie Tian could actually burst out such a terrifying power, directly smashing her ghost word shield. Even under the suppression of the restriction, her strength was comparable to a martial artist at the 9th level of true element. Why was she at a disadvantage in a head-on collision with Nie Tian, a martial artist at the 6th level of true element? But at the same time, she also knew that Nie Tian did not break the ghost word shield with a sword at all. The moves that he used afterwards were the real power that had a strong restraining effect on the ghost word shield. Star Soul, the purest condensation of star power, was the origin of power, and could restrain any power, especially the evil 6-word ghost word technique. Bastard! Wan Qirong, in a panic, cursed, but her voice was drowned out by the roars of ghosts in the ghost word shield. Nie Tian could see from her mouth that the latter was saying, "You didn't use a sword at all." Nie Tian's mouth curled up coldly, and he whispered 4 words, "All is fair in war." People like Wan Qirong, of course, did not need any moral commitment. Killing with a sword was just a casual remark by Nie Tian, who knew that Wan Qirong would take it seriously. Wan Qirong's strength was far from being comparable to Mo Lei and Qiu Wuhan. It was indeed a bit difficult to kill her with a sword, so Nie Tian added the power of 2 third-rank star souls after the sword move. After the killing move, there was another killing move, and after the follow-up move, there was still a follow-up move. Being able to use the proud sword art and 2 astral souls at the same time was also thanks to Nie Tian's strong spiritual force. Otherwise it would be impossible to do it. Generally, martial artists rarely use 2 moves at the same time. That was because their mental strength was not strong enough. The result of using 2 moves at the same time was that the 2 moves would not be able to display the power they should have. Using multiple martial skills at the same time could only be done by martial artists with strong mental strength. Therefore, if an alchemist was strong enough, he would usually be able to crush opponents of the same level. Wan Qirong's lips were still quivering, but the second third-ranked astral soul, the heart-shattering ghost palm, had already arrived. In the air, a black-blooded palm imprint appeared, emitting a terrifying aura, akin to the raging waves of a raging storm. Bang! With a muffled sound, Wan Qirong's figure was like a lone boat on a turbulent sea, directly drowning under the huge black blood handprint. The last sound she let out before she died was a shrill scream, after which everything returned to normal. The deputy pavilion master of Ling Xian Tian Pavilion died just like that. Wan Qirong would never have dreamed that she would actually die here, in the chaotic abyss, in the hands of Nie Tian. When she was in Chaos City, Nie Tian was just a small ant that she completely looked down on. However, a few days later, she actually died in the hands of a small ant. The affairs of the world were really unpredictable. The power of the ghost words in the air dissipated, the surging sword qi swept into the evil qi, and the last brilliance of the sword left a beautiful sword flower, and then disappeared. After the smoke dissipated, the scene was dead silent. Everyone on the ground looked at the figure standing in the air. Their eyes were filled with indescribable shock. Killed, teacher really killed her. Duanmu Lu was the first to react and said dumbly. When the others heard his voice, they slowly reacted. Pfft. At this time, Nie Tian's figure swayed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He used almost all the strength in his body in that attack just now, and at this time, the power of the 6th rank Yuan burst pill was still wreaking havoc, making it hard for his body to withstand. He can no longer withstand the power of the 6th rank Yuan burst pill. Let's kill him. Tawny sensed something and roared. She wanted to move, but the figures opposite her were faster than her. Rui Qianyu, Tang 13, and Zhan En and Zhan Qi from the Battle Cloud sect had long locked onto Tawny. Before the latter could make a move, 4 surges of energy shot out at the same time. Run! Mo Fun and Qiu Xiaofeng unexpectedly had a tacit understanding. Without even looking at Tawny, they ran away. Bastard! Tawny shouted, and 3,000 weak water spirits appeared behind her. The weak water shield emitted a faint ripple that wrapped around her body. But without the eye of the Scar of the Dusk, Tawny was no different from a true energy realm cultivator in the serene forest, even if she was in the true energy realm. To use the weak water shield to defend against the combined attack of Rui Qianyu and the other 3 was simply a fool's dream. Feeling the intense killing intent, Tawny's beautiful eyes trembled, and fear filled her eyes. Don't hurt her! At this time, a voice suddenly sounded, and then a terrifying sword intent descended, forming a sword shield in the air, blocking part of the attack for Tawny. Bang! Tawny's figure flew backwards, but with the protection of the sword shield and the weak water shield, she was not seriously injured. Huh! Everyone was stunned and looked at Nie Tian, who had just saved Tawny. Nie Tian. Tawny stabilized her body, looking puzzled, not understanding why Nie Tian had saved her. Nie Tian's figure landed, glanced at Rui Qianyu and the others, and finally looked at Gu Wuyo. The latter had a blood feud with Tawny, so of course, he had to explain. I need her to help save Elder Yi. Nie Tian nodded and said to Gu Wuyo. N. Gu Wuyo nodded lightly. Not only did she not blame Nie Tian, but she even let out a long sigh of relief. Tawny had killed her father and mother, and this blood feud was absolutely irreconcilable. This kind of blood feud must be avenged with her own hands. If Tawny died at this time, Gu Wuyo would be really sad. She can save Elder Yi? Everyone was stunned again, looking at Tawny in confusion. Elder Yi had been hit by the demon sealing seal. Even if Tawny had heaven-defying means, it was impossible for her to force out the demon sealing seal. Mo Feng and Qiu Xiaofeng had escaped, but Nie Tian did not care. They were just 2 small shrimps, so he did not care. Nie Tian wanted to obtain the fateful spirit ginseng before the 6th grade Yuan burst pill's medicinal power disappeared. Tawny, do me a favor and I will let you go. Nie Tian took a deep breath and said coldly. Master, you want to use the heaven-shrouding totem? Inside the chaotic original coffin, Corpse Demon King suddenly thought of something, and his voice became hoarse. With the help of the Yuan burst pill, Nie Tian's strength had reached the 6th stage of the true element boundary, and the star power in his body had temporarily awakened to 6 billion. The star stone shone brightly, and the heaven-shrouding totem above the first layer of the sky river became much clearer. Nie Tian had just tested it, and could already sense the heaven-shrouding totem, but it was still not enough to activate it. Chapter 506. If he wanted to save Elder Yi, he had to get the Heaven's Fate Spirit Ginseng. And to get the Heaven's Fate Spirit Ginseng, the Spiky Demon Scorpion and the Rank 7 Spirit Protective Array were 2 insurmountable obstacles. Nie Tian's only chance now was the heaven-shrouding totem. At this time, under the tyrannical medicinal effect of the Rank 6 Yuan burst pill, his strength had reached the true essence 6th level, the star power within his body had awakened 6 billion, and the heaven-shrouding totem had begun to take shape, but to fully activate it was far from enough. Nye Tian had once seen the power of Tawny's Scar of Dusk barrier, easily trapping hundreds of martial artists. It was really abnormal. In his previous life, Nye Tian had seen martial artists with Scar of Dusk barrier, but they had not activated it. Because of this, Scar of Dusk barrier was only ranked 9th among the 10 other pupils. But after seeing Tawny's Scar of Dusk barrier, Nye Tian estimated that the power of Scar of Dusk barrier was above the 7th other pupil, 9-color pupils. At least for now, Rui Qinyu's 9-color pupils was far from being able to compete with Tawny's Scar of Dusk barrier. If he borrowed the power of Scar of Dusk barrier, Nye Tian had enough confidence to activate the Heaven Shrouding Totem. Corpse Demon King guessed that Nye Tian was going to use the Heaven Shrouding Totem, and his voice became hoarse. Currently, Nye Tian's biggest reliance was the 10th Yuan Meridian, the Primal Star Stone. If he forcibly activated the Heaven Shrouding Totem, he really did not know what kind of effect it would have on the Primal Star Stone. Perhaps the Primal Star Stone could not withstand the power of the Heaven Shrouding Totem and would directly shatter. The Primal Star Stone had already fused with Nye Tian. If it shattered, perhaps Nye Tian's life would also be in danger. As the owner of the Primal Star Stone, Nye Tian of course knew the huge risk of doing this. And even worse, even if the Heaven Shrouding Totem was forcibly activated, how much power could it display? Could it really block the human-face spiky demon scorpion? Everything was unknown. Nye Tian's move was really risky. It was completely gambling with his life. However, in order to save Elder Yi, no matter how great the risk was, he had to take the risk. Even if there was only the slightest hope, he had to put in the greatest effort. If Nye Tian didn't do anything and just watched Elder Yi die, he wouldn't feel at ease for the rest of his life. Corpse Luo, I've already made up my mind. You don't have to persuade me. Nye Tian nodded solemnly, his eyes filled with the most extreme determination. At some point, Nye Tian had thought of removing the Soul Blood contract for Corpse Lord, because if something happened to him, Corpse Lord, who had a Soul Blood contract with him, would also die. However, he was still unsure of the Corpse Demon Lord's current state of mind, so he could only let the latter bear the risk with him. No one knew that Nye Tian wanted to obtain the Destiny Spirit Ginseng, but looking at his solemn and gloomy expression, they could vaguely guess that he was making a huge decision. You want me to help? Tawny looked at Nye Tian, a hint of playfulness flashed in her eyes, and she said with a light smile, Why should I help you? The corner of Nye Tian's mouth curled into a cold smile, and he said solemnly, For your own life. This favor, Tawny had to help, even if she didn't want to. Tawny felt the killing intent from Nye Tian, and her gaze trembled slightly, and she said, How can I trust you? What if I help you, and you still want to kill me? Just now, Nye Tian had already gone back on his words once, and to kill Wan Qirong, he didn't use just one sword strike. I'll ask you one more time, are you going to help or not? Nye Tian didn't answer Tawny's question, and suddenly released the killing intent from all over his body. The rank 6 Yuan burst pill's medicinal effect wouldn't last long, and he didn't have the time to argue with Tawny. Tawny's delicate body trembled, and she could clearly feel the gloomy killing intent from her opponent, and it was definitely not just a threat. Nye Tian was pressed for time, and if Tawny wasn't willing to help, he wouldn't hesitate to kill her. Even if the latter didn't exist, he still had to give it a try. I have a condition, if you agree to it, I will. A strange look suddenly flashed through Tawny's eyes, and she actually wanted to raise a condition at this time. She dared to raise a condition because she could see that Nye Tian was a very loyal person, and he definitely wouldn't watch Elder Yi die, and she happened to be the key to saving Elder Yi, so Nye Tian definitely wouldn't refuse. Speak. As expected, Nye Tian didn't wait for Tawny to finish, and directly shouted. At this time, Tawny looked at Gu Wuyo, and seemed to be thinking about something. Nye Tian saw something, and directly said, The Scarlet Soul Red Lotus doesn't belong to you, don't have any ideas about it. If Tawny wanted the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus in Gu Wuyo's body, Nie Tian definitely wouldn't agree. The Scarlet Soul Red Lotus had already become one with Gu Wuyo, and it had become her second primordial spirit. If it was forcibly taken away, she would definitely die. To save one person at the expense of another, this kind of thing naturally couldn't be done. Tawny nodded, and there was no disappointment in her eyes. She originally didn't want the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus from Nie Tian, and she said, Nie Tian, I am from the Lin Xian Tian Pavilion. Get to the point. Nie Tian didn't want to listen to nonsense. He only wanted to hear Tawny's condition, and nothing else was important. Tawny suddenly understood that Nie Tian was afraid that the medicinal effects of the Yuan Burst pill in her body would dissipate. After thinking for a moment, she directly said, My Red Lotus demonic essence is in the hands of Lord Yu Gui. Red Lotus demonic essence? Nie Tian was slightly stunned, and he didn't know what that meant. Seems like you don't know everything. Tawny chuckled and explained, I'm not human, I'm from the demon world's Red Lotus race. After everyone in the Red Lotus race is born, apart from the primordial spirit, there is also a Red Lotus demonic essence. The Red Lotus demonic essence is very important to the Red Lotus race, and it can be seen as a second life. Once the demonic essence leaves the body, the Red Lotus race won't live past 40 years old. My Red Lotus demon essence was taken by Nether Ghost. Corpse Luo? Nie Tian shouted. Master, what she said is true. The Red Lotus race all have Red Lotus demonic essence, Corpse Luo Demon Lord replied. Corpse Luo Demon Lord was once good friends with the Red Lotus Monarch, so it wasn't surprising that he knew this. You want me to help you get back the Red Lotus demonic essence? Nie Tian frowned slightly. Of course, he knew that the Yu Gui that Tawny mentioned was the Ling Xian Sky Pavilion's master. Tawny nodded, and her eyes were filled with desire. She trusted Nie Tian very much, and she actually made such a request. The Ling Xian Sky Pavilion's master could be said to be someone who stood at the peak of the 3,000 lesser world. Even Tang Hao and Mo Zhaojing might not dare to say that they could definitely defeat the Pavilion Master. No matter what, Yu Gui was someone who had defeated Elder Yi. Even if he used dishonorable methods back then, it was enough to show that he was powerful. Moreover, he was able to leave the death chain on Elder Ye's body, which showed that he was ruthless and powerful. One had to know that when Elder Yi wreaked havoc in Sumi's spiritual capital, even Tang Hao and Mo Zhaojing could only fight him to a draw. Tawny wanted Nie Tian to help her get back the Red Lotus demonic essence. It seemed that she thought highly of the latter and was very confident in his strength. Chapter 507. Nie Tian gladly accepted Tawny's conditions. Yu Gui was already an irreconcilable enemy of Elder Yi. In the future, Nie Tian would meet this person sooner or later, so Tawny's conditions were nothing to him. How old are you now? Nie Tian asked directly. It was extremely impolite to ask a woman's age in person, but he couldn't care less at this moment. Tawny just said that once the Red Lotus demonic energy left her body, she would not live past 40 years old. Nie Tian just wanted to know how much time she had left. 37 years old. Tawny was stunned for a moment, but immediately understood what Nie Tian meant. She nodded and said, 3 years is enough. Nie Tian raised the corner of his mouth and was very confident. The master of Ling Xian Tian Pavilion was at most at the peak of the spirit wheel stage. Nie Tian was confident that he could reach this level within 3 years. Nie Tian agreed to Tawny's conditions. The latter nodded slightly, but her eyes turned to Gu Wuyo again. After thinking for a moment, she still said, I had no choice but to kill your parents. Gu Wuyo was stunned for a moment, but immediately said coldly, The revenge of my parents is absolutely irreconcilable. I don't care why you killed them back then, I will definitely avenge them. Tawny's eyes flickered. She wanted to say something, but she swallowed it in the end. She turned to Nie Tian and said, Nie Tian City Lord, let's go. Tell me how to save them, I will do it. Nie Tian was slightly stunned. It seemed that Tawny had something that she couldn't say. Could it be that she had another reason for killing Gu Wuyo's parents back then? Nodding slightly, Nie Tian didn't think too much about it. The most important thing now was to save Elder Yi. Follow me, Nie Tian said. His figure flashed and he ran in the direction of the spirit ginseng. Tawny was puzzled. Shouldn't Elder Yi be in the valley? Why did Nie Tian run outside? Although she had her doubts, she still chased after him. The rest of the people followed suit, leaving only Cher and the giant snake shyly guarding the Rainbow Valley. Cher stared in the direction where Nie Tian disappeared. She wanted to chase after him, but she was afraid that she would be embarrassed and angry, so she turned around and entered the valley with him. A moment later, everyone appeared where the Destiny Spirit Ginseng was. Why did you bring me here? Tawny stopped and looked at the Heavenly Fate Spirit Ginseng in the air. She sensed the powerful aura and could not help but ask. The others also looked at Nie Tian in puzzlement. They wondered if he had any thoughts about the Spirit Ginseng of Destiny. I want you to help me get the Destiny Spirit Ginseng. Nie Tian looked at the Destiny Spirit Ginseng with a determined expression. Everyone was stunned for a few seconds. Their eyes seemed to be saying, "Are you crazy? How can I help you?" Tawny quickly calmed down and asked. Nie Tian didn't say anything. With a shake of his body, a vast, boundless aura surged out of him, and a huge net that was thousands of meters in circumference appeared behind him. Faint starlight flickered on the net, giving off a majestic feeling. This is... Feeling the aura on the sky-covering net, Tawny was stunned. It was obviously the same power as her Scar of the Dusk Eye. Nie Tian directly withdrew the sky-covering totem and said, "I need the power of your Scar of the Dusk Eye to help me release the power of the sky-covering totem." Tawny was very smart. Of course, she knew that the sky-covering totem Nie Tian was talking about was the huge net just now. She nodded heavily. She could not imagine what kind of power was hidden in Nie Tian's body. How could he release such a horrifying thing? Nie Tian turned his gaze to Rui Qinyu. The latter directly said, "What do I need to do? Do you still have the spiritual tool I gave you?" Nie Tian asked. Before Rui Qinyu left, Nie Tian had given her the rank 9 spiritual tool, Blue Phoenix Vine. Rui Qinyu took out the Blue Phoenix Vine and passed it to Nie Tian. Nie Tian nodded and said, "I need you to help me break open the Destiny Spirit Ginseng's protective spiritual array." The Destiny Spirit Ginseng's protective spiritual array was a rank 7 spiritual array. With Nie Tian's attainments and formations, it was almost impossible to break it open. Therefore, he could only forcefully break it open. The rank 9 spiritual tool, Blue Phoenix Vine, together with the power of the Rainbow Pupil, forcefully breaking open a gap in the spiritual array shouldn't be a problem. Rui Qinyu's expression was cold like a block of ice. She nodded slightly. Nie Tian raised his head and looked at the strange flower in the sky. His eyes were filled with passion. He must get the Destiny Spirit Ginseng. In the next moment, a red spiritual pill suddenly appeared in Nie Tian's hand. It was another rank 6 Yuan burst pill. "Master Yu." Seeing Nie Tian take out another rank 6 Yuan burst pill, Demon Lord Corpse Luo's eyes widened. It seemed like he was going to eat another one. A rank 6 Yuan burst pill's medicinal power was already terrifying enough. Even a spirit wheel stage expert wouldn't dare to eat another one before the medicinal power of the previous one subsided. Nie Tian took a deep breath and murmured, "I can only pin my hopes on the 9-star dragon vein body. Since it is comparable to the body of a divine dragon, it should be enough for me to withstand the medicinal power of 2 rank 6 Yuan burst pills." He was indeed going to eat the second Yuan burst pill. His current strength was still too weak. Even if he activated the star totem, he wouldn't be able to unleash much power. Therefore, Nie Tian had to take the risk. If he took another rank 6 Yuan burst pill, his strength would reach the true element realm level 9. Although this strength would be suppressed by a stronger seal, it would help him awaken more star power. He only needed more star power. The sky-shrouding totem was the key to stop the spiky magic scorpion. Nia Tian, are you crazy? Tawny could tell at a glance that the spiritual pill that appeared in Nia Tian's hand was another rank 6 yuan burst pill. A rank 6 yuan burst pill was already fatal. Even a spirit wheel stage expert wouldn't be able to withstand another one. If Nia Tian took another rank 6 yuan burst pill, it would be strange if his body didn't explode and die. Nia Tian glanced at Tawny and said indifferently, "State Preceptor, I hope your Scar of Dusk eye won't disappoint me." After that, Nia Tian directly swallowed the yuan burst pill. Aha! As the rank 6 yuan burst pill entered his body, it suddenly erupted with tyrannical medicinal power. Like a ferocious beast, it wantonly attacked the meridians in Nia Tian's body, causing him to groan uncontrollably. In an instant, Nia Tian's whole body was drenched in sweat. Beads of sweat oozed out of his forehead. Bang! 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 The sudden release of power caused Nia Tian's muscles to swell up. His clothes were torn and his face became ferocious. His whole body was red and bloodshot, as if he was going to explode into a pool of blood in the next moment. Nia Tian! Teacher! Nia Tian City Lord! Everyone shouted. Looking at Nia Tian, who seemed to be on the verge of going berserk, they were panic-stricken. At this time, no one could help Nia Tian. He was the only one who could hold on. Within Nia Tian's body, pieces of star power were awakened and activated. There were faint shadows of 9 dragons swimming in his meridians. Although the 9-star dragon vein body was a heaven-defying divine body, it was a pity that the time it had merged with Nia Tian was too short. It was only at the initial stage, and completely unable to unleash its true power. The next moment, an even more horrifying and bloody scene appeared. Chapter 508. The 9-star dragon vein constitution was equivalent to giving Nia Tian a high-level innate spiritual body, but the true power of the innate spiritual body could not be unleashed yet. Nia Tian was covered in blood as he endured the pain of his body being cut open, but his consciousness was still very clear. Everyone's eyes widened at the bloody scene in front of them, and their hearts were in their throats. Was Nia Tian's body still made of flesh and blood? How could he still be standing in such a state? It was only then that Tawny realized that the talent and potential of the young man in front of her was much greater than she had expected. The wound exploded and blood splattered everywhere. Sword intent surged and boundless energy was released in an instant. The air was filled with a bloody and violent energy. All right. Nia Tian's face was covered in blood, and he was no longer recognizable as a human. However, he did not care about it at all. With a roar, he leaped into the air and shouted, "Tawny, Rui Qianyu, get ready!" Tawny and Rui Qianyu heard the voice, and they seemed to have woken up from a dream. They leaped into the air and followed closely behind the bloody figure. Everyone else retreated, and no one knew what was going to happen next. Nia Tian was too crazy, and he did not care about his own life. Nia Tian and the rest were extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, they arrived within the range of the Destiny Spirit Ginseng. The Destiny Spirit Ginseng was the same as before, and there were no changes to it. The dazzling 7-colored divine light flowed within a few hundred meters, and the gorgeous petals bloomed layer by layer, constantly changing colors. It was breathtakingly beautiful. In the bloody light, Nia Tian's eyes were dark red, and he stared at the pure white ball in the center of the 7-colored halo. That was the physical body of the Destiny Spirit Ginseng, and it was only the size of a fist. As long as he could get it, Elder Yi would be saved. When he was within 100 meters of the Heaven's Fate Spirit Ginseng, the aura of the halo became stronger and stronger. The tyrannical power of the spirit array rushed over and blocked Nia Tian, making it difficult for him to approach the Heaven's Fate Spirit Ginseng. At the same time, the roots of the Destiny Spirit Ginseng appeared again. They were like dancing snakes, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. They extended to dozens of meters and instantly wrapped around the Destiny Spirit Ginseng, turning it into a dazzling white ball of fur. Be careful! The guardian spirit beast is coming out. Nie Tian knew that the fated spirit Ginseng was summoning the guardian spirit Ginseng. He shouted to remind Tawny and Rui Qinyu. The two of them had not come to snatch the spirit Ginseng, so they had seen the human-faced, spiky devil scorpion from afar. The two of them did not have a clear understanding of the spiked devil scorpion's true strength. Boom! As soon as Nie Tian's voice fell, the cliff in the distance suddenly shook. A loud noise shook the heaven and earth, and the whole mountain looked like it was about to collapse. What a strong aura! Feeling the powerful aura of the spiked devil scorpion at close range, Tawny and Rui Qinyu were shocked. Boom! The next moment, the mountain shook even more violently, and it was on the verge of collapse. What happened next was that the surrounding space actually froze, and an invisible force spread out. This is it. Nie Tian was not afraid in the face of danger. He was very calm. Before the invisible force reached him, his aura suddenly exploded, and a vast and boundless net appeared behind him. The heaven-shrouding totem appeared for the second time, but it was even bigger than before. It was thousands of meters wide, and there were specks of starlight on it. An ancient and majestic aura constantly vibrated, and everyone felt as if the sky was being covered. After taking the second Yuan burst pill, Nie Tian's strength soared to the true essence 9th layer, and the power of the stars within his body awakened to 9 billion. The heaven-shrouding totem had already taken shape, and after it was released, there was a terrifying pressure. However, the heaven-shrouding totem was just an empty shell. It was impossible to stop the spiked devil scorpion. Tawny, do it! Nie Tian controlled the heaven-shrouding totem and shrouded the huge mountain. He wanted to seal the spiked devil scorpion in the mountain and not let it come out. The heaven-shrouding totem blocked the powerful aura of the spiked devil scorpion. Tawny and Rui Qinyu suddenly felt a little better. Eye of Dusk Scar open! Tawny nodded solemnly, and the corner of her mouth rose slightly. She murmured softly, and the eye between her eyebrows suddenly opened. The Eye of Dusk Scar opened, and the endless eye power turned into a blood-red airflow, like ripples in a lake, surging out. This was the second time that Tawny had opened the Eye of Dusk Scar, and she was more adept at controlling it. Endless blood-red airflow gushed out from the Eye of Dusk Scar, like a 10,000 feet red burial, or like the afterglow of the setting sun. In just a blink of an eye, the airflow had already spread out thousands of meters, covering the entire void. The blood-red airflow gushed into the heaven-shrouding totem, and turned into the purest power of the stars. The entire totem seemed to be ignited by a scarlet flame. In an instant the starlight shone brightly, and the totem's power was stimulated. A vast power surged out, and formed an endless sea of starlight, covering the sky and the sun, covering the 10,000 feet mountain. The originally shaky mountain actually stabilized. The aura of the spiked devil scorpion was temporarily suppressed. Through the dark red in his eyes, Nie Tian saw that the mountain had stabilized, and he couldn't help but feel relieved. He didn't expect the heaven-shrouding totem to really seal the spiked devil scorpion. He only wanted to use the heaven-shrouding totem to temporarily block the spiked devil scorpion. As long as he was given a few minutes, he would be able to break through the spiritual array and obtain the Destiny Spirit Ginseng. At this moment, the mountain was quiet, as if the spiked devil scorpion had retreated and directly left. Nie Tian didn't care so much and seized the time. He looked back at Rui Qinyu, and the latter nodded knowingly. Green Phoenix Vine Halo, a rank 9 spiritual artifact. Whether or not you can break the rank 7 spiritual array will depend on your Emperor Light. The Green Phoenix Vine Halo appeared in Nie Tian's hand, and he murmured. If he was holding a rank 9 longsword in his hand, he would have enough confidence to break the spiritual array. After all, he was a swordsman with sword intent, and his current strength was already in the 9th level of true element, and he could already use the Emperor Light of a rank 9 Emperor weapon. The green phoenix vine halo appeared, and it emitted a faint divine light. It was the light that only a rank 9 spiritual artifact could emit, Emperor Light. Nie Tian was going to use the Emperor Light of the green phoenix vine halo to break the spiritual array of the Destiny Spirit Ginseng. Not everyone could control a rank 9 spiritual artifact. Normally, one had to be at least in the Heaven Evolution Realm, or even the Heaven Realm, to be able to control a rank 9 Emperor weapon. Nie Tian was currently in the 9th level of True Element Realm. If he used the Green Phoenix Vine Halo, he would definitely suffer the backlash of the Emperor Light, but he couldn't care less. He had already endured the power of 2 rank 6 Yuan burst pills, so why would he be afraid of the backlash of a mere Emperor Light? Nie Tian looked at the dazzling hairy ball 100 meters away. That was the key to saving Elder Yi, and his eyes instantly became even more determined. Without hesitation, the Yuan meridians in Nie Tian's body started to operate crazily, and the Yuan energy in his body surged out like a river bursting its bank. On the green phoenix vine halo, the sword intent surged, and the sword light shot out 100 meters away. Combined with the Emperor Light of a rank 9 spiritual artifact, it actually condensed into a huge sword shadow that was hundreds of meters long. The sword shadow was like a mountain, and like the sea, vast and powerful. Chapter 509. The Heavenly Fate Spirit Ginseng's defensive spiritual array was a rank 7 spiritual array. The power of the array was extremely strong. The moment it felt the attack, the runes in the array started to circulate. Rays of 7-colored light instantly formed a majestic barrier that looked indestructible. Boom! The mighty sword shadow landed on the spiritual array's barrier, causing a sword radiance to soar into the sky. Boundless sword intent soared into the sky, and the space seemed to freeze at this moment. The azure phoenix vine fell. Nie Tian opened his blood-red eyes and saw that the spiritual array's barrier didn't break. There wasn't even the slightest crack on it. What a powerful spiritual array's barrier. The power of a rank 9 Arch artifact was completely ignored. Nie Tian's face, which was dyed red with blood, suddenly stiffened. He had unleashed his full strength with that sword strike just now, but he still hadn't been able to break through the spiritual formation. The Heavenly Fate Spirit Ginseng's protective spiritual formation was even more powerful than he had imagined. What should I do? Nie Tian's heart trembled. He stared at the dazzling white ball of fur in the center of the spiritual array. The spreading roots were like a dancing spirit ginseng that seemed to be mocking him for his incompetence. Nie Tian. Rui Qianyu came to Nie Tian's side. Her cold expression changed slightly when she felt the powerful aura of the spiritual array. Although she wasn't a spiritual array master, the powerful aura made her feel that the spiritual array was indestructible. Rui Qianyu admitted that even if she opened both of her 9-colored pupils, she wouldn't be able to break through the spiritual array. Boom! At this moment, the mountain in the distance suddenly shook and a huge mound rose. The entire body was on the verge of collapse again. Oh no! Nie Tian immediately understood that the human-faced spiky devil scorpion didn't give up on resisting. Instead, it retreated and charged forward. The mountain shook and a majestic aura pressed down from the void. The huge net formed by the totem was actually dented by the impact. The starlight in the sky flickered as if the sky was going to fall at any time. Tawny immediately felt a sharp pain in the eye of the scar of dusk. Blood immediately flowed out and dyed her delicate face red. Nie Tian! Tawny screamed and looked at Nie Tian. It was obvious that she was in great pain. At this moment, Nie Tian's expression was even more unsightly. The eye of the scar of the dusk had only been injured by the huge recoil, but the heaven-shrouding totem was directly connected to the origin star stone. At the moment of impact, the entire starry river domain shook, the boundless space began to sway, and the originally empty domain origin formation became unstable. The origin star stone even tilted slightly, showing signs of collapsing. Pooh! Nie Tion's body swayed, and he spat out a mouthful of dirty blood. The wounds on his body burst open even more, and there was not a single part of his body that was intact. Nie Tion, give up, Rui Qinyu said indifferently when she saw Nie Tion's situation. He was about to collapse at any time. Master, the spirit formation is too strong. The green phoenix vine in your hand is not a sword. In your hands it cannot unleash the power of the monarch light. The corpse demon monarch's voice sounded from within the primal chaos original coffin. He was right. Although the green phoenix vine was a tier 9 monarch weapon, in the hands of Nie Tion, it could not unleash its power at all. Nie Tion was a swordsman. He needed a sword, not a vine. No! Nie Tion wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his expression became ferocious. There was only one thought in his mind: Elder Yi cannot die. He must obtain the spirit ginseng of destiny, no matter the price. Thinking of this, Nie Tion's eyes shone with extreme determination. He returned the green phoenix vine to Rui Qinyu, and the heaven-severing sword appeared in his hand again. The green phoenix vine was a tier 9 monarch weapon, while the heaven-severing sword was only an ordinary tier 5 spiritual tool. However, when Nie Tion held it in his hand, he showed even more confidence. Come on! Isn't it just a tier 7 spiritual formation? I will break it! With a deep roar, Nie Tion's figure suddenly leaped up, and the blood on his body became even more vigorous. Suddenly, an endless blood qi was released, and the bloody and violent aura surged for hundreds of meters. The blood qi contained the purest sword will of a swordsman. The sword qi filled the air, and the sword will surged. Slowly, the surrounding space seemed to condense, and a strange blood-colored formation appeared around Nie Tion's body. Master, you are going to... Corpse Demon King immediately realized something. His expression stiffened, and even his voice was stuttering. AO sword skill, sword sealing forbidden formation. In the next moment, a rumbling voice came out, and the blood qi on Nie Tion's body became more rampant, and the blood-colored formation became more realistic. The sword sealing forbidden formation was one of the 3 sword formations contained in the AO sword skill, and it was even more terrifying than the 12 heaven-severing sword formation. It had to use the blood qi of a martial artist as a guide, and condense the formation with the purest sword will. At this moment, Nie Tion's body was already withstanding the power of 2 tier 6 yuan burst pills. Just now, he was backlashed by the power of the green phoenix vine's emperor light, and also attacked by the spiked devil scorpion. He was already on the verge of collapse, and was at the limit of his life. Using the sword sealing forbidden formation at this moment was simply gambling with his life. Rui Qinyu felt the violent aura released from Nie Tion's body, and she was a little stunned for a moment. But when she thought of Nie Tion's previous identity, she felt much more at ease. In the bloody massacre ancient tomb, Rui Qinyu had already learned of Nie Tion's true identity from the corpse Devil King. The Heaven Realm's #1 war god, the peak of sword principle in the Heaven Realm, was indeed beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Rui Qinyu, get ready to take the spirit ginseng of destiny. Nie Tion stood in the air, and his whole body was covered in blood as he shouted loudly. The next sword strike was going to be Nie Tion's most powerful one. Sword sealing forbidden formation, sword dragon devours the world. Nie Tion stood proudly in the air, and his cold voice sounded. In the sword sealing forbidden formation, the runes of the formation instantly gathered together, and a blood-colored divine dragon appeared in the void. Its eyes were crimson red, and the dragon's scales on its body released a violent bloody aura. Roar! An earth-shattering dragon roar sounded, stirring up the dark clouds in all directions, as if the whole world was boiling. Break it! A cold roar sounded, and the huge body of the sword dragon rolled out, galloping and roaring, as if it was going to destroy everything. When Thousand Leaves, who was standing to the side, looked at the blood-red sword dragon, she felt a stifling sensation in her heart. It was as if she was in the middle of a blood-red ocean. A boundless aura swept over her, causing her to feel a desire to worship it. The sword sealing forbidden formation, Nye Tian was going to use an array to break an array. Boom! The blood-red sword dragon was extremely fast, and it swooped down, turning into a blazing flame, and blasted at the spirit ginseng's defensive spiritual array. The rolling aura pressed down, and the space tightened. The spirit ginseng in the center of the spiritual array seemed to sense the threat, and its wildly dancing roots stopped in the air for a moment, and then suddenly shrank like a frightened kitten. Chapter 510. Tawny couldn't hide the fear in her eyes when she saw the giant mountain shaking and about to collapse. Scar of Dusk Ward open. Once again, she used the Scar of Dusk barrier. Endless blood-colored air surged out of the Scar of Dusk eye, and the surrounding space seemed to freeze. Waves of blood-colored eye bloodline power surged into the sky-covering totem, forming a barrier that was several thousand meters wide. On the other side, the scarlet sword dragon formed by the sword-sealing forbidden formation pounced out ferociously with raging flames surging over. The air around it became misty, and the temperature rose abruptly. The area within a few hundred meters turned into a giant furnace. Boom! The giant dragon was like fire, and the fire was like a sharp sword. It collided with the rank 7 spiritual array, and the power of the array shook for a second. The next moment, it collapsed, and the endless power of the array filled the air. Scarlet Eye, burning the sky. Rui Qianyu saw that the time was right. She opened her 9-color eyes, and the power of the Scarlet Eye burst out. A pillar of fire appeared and broke through the power of the array. She turned into a bolt of lightning and dashed towards the Destiny Spirit Ginseng in the center of the spiritual array. Boom! At the same time, the spiky demon scorpion finally arrived. The giant mountain shook and a huge force came out and hit the sky-shrouding totem. The giant net of the sky-shrouding totem was immediately distorted. It was as if a giant stone had been thrown into the net and a deep depression appeared. Bang! The Scar of Dusk ward on the sky-shrouding totem collapsed. Ah! Tawny screamed and spat out a mouthful of blood. The Scar of Dusk eye closed and her body swayed. She couldn't hold on any longer and fell from the sky. At this moment, a figure flew up and caught Tawny in his arms. It's you. The last face that Tawny saw was her mortal enemy, Gu Wuyo. The Scar of Dusk ward on the sky-shrouding totem collapsed and a huge force landed on the totem. The thin net couldn't withstand the force and a big hole appeared. Puff! Puff! The primal star stone in Nye Tian's body shook violently, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Boom! In the Star River domain, there was a loud noise that shook the heavens and the earth. The domain origin formation could not withstand the huge impact and directly collapsed. However, the origin star stone that connected the heavens and the earth still stood tall, like a giant standing proudly between the heavens and the earth, supporting the 9 heavens river above its head. Nye Tian's consciousness instantly grew blurry. However, a voice rang out in his subconscious mind. He squinted his eyes and saw that Raindrop Thousand Leaf was holding a rainbow-colored ball of light in her hand. A faint smile finally appeared on his cold lips. However, in the next moment, her expression suddenly became flustered, and she shouted something loudly. However, Nye Tian could no longer hear the voice. At the last moment, he felt that the primal star stone in his body, which was originally shining with starlight, suddenly became dark, and then the sky-shrouding totem instantly disappeared. Nye Tian finally couldn't bear it and passed out. His blood-stained body was like a leaf in the wind, swaying and falling. Nye Tian. Rui Qianyu had already obtained the fateful spirit ginseng. Seeing Nye Tian fall, she screamed in horror. But at this moment, a mighty force suddenly pressed down, and the space seemed to freeze at this moment. Boom! The mountain could no longer withstand the massive tremors and directly collapsed. Boulders flew everywhere as a gigantic body rushed out from within the rubble. The human-faced, spiky demonic scorpion charged out with its 1,000-meter-long body, and the world turned dark. The moment Rui Qianyu saw the spiky magic scorpion, she was stunned. This giant beast was too terrifying. Its body was as dark as the night, and its back was covered with terrifying spikes like knives and swords. Its entire body seemed to be cast from steel. Woo! The spiky magic scorpion rushed out of the mountain, and its huge face was somewhat similar to a human's. It let out a shrill and strange cry, and its abyss-like eyes seemed to have discovered the fateful spirit ginseng in Rui Qianyu's hand. It suddenly became furious, and its body moved over, waving its huge black claws that were hundreds of meters long. It was simply suffocating. If it was someone else facing this situation, they would definitely be at a loss of what to do and dare not move. But the spiky magic scorpion was facing Rui Qianyu, whose mind was far more tenacious than ordinary people. It was only a short while, and Rui Qianyu immediately calmed down. She whispered softly, "Blue pupil, freeze." As the ice-cold voice rang out, boundless ice sealing energy gushed out in an unending stream. 1,000 Leaves was like an iceberg, emitting a boundless chill. Crack! Crack! The coldness spread in the air, and the space within a kilometer in front of Rui Qianyu was rapidly frozen. She wanted to stop the spiky magic scorpion from approaching Ye Tian, but the latter's strength was too strong. With a light wave of its huge claws, the frozen space was directly shattered. At the same time, Ye Tian was confined by the spiky magic scorpion's aura. As long as the spiky magic scorpion's claws landed, he would definitely be turned into a pool of blood. Rui Qianyu wanted to move closer, but she realized that the space around the spiky magic scorpion was frozen, and she couldn't move even half a step forward. It was impossible for her to get close to Ye Tian. Ye Tian was currently unconscious, and his body was wrapped in a layer of blood. His aura was gradually weakening. "Master!" The corpse demon king came out of the chaotic original coffin, and its small body released waves of blood-colored yuan force, which surged into Ye Tian's body. In the next moment, Ye Tian actually woke up, but the pain in his body almost made him faint again. Pain, heart-wrenching pain. Ye Tian's body was covered with horrifying wounds, and there wasn't a single intact skin. Fortunately, these bloody wounds had already formed scabs, and they seemed to be slowly healing, so he wouldn't die from excessive blood loss. "Master, you're awake!" the corpse demon king exclaimed, and its body hurried back to the chaotic original coffin. Ye Tian groaned, and he used all his strength to stand up, but he saw a huge black figure was madly rushing towards him. Spiky magic scorpion! Ye Tian was quite shocked, and he suddenly remembered that when he was unconscious, the spiky magic scorpion had already broken through the sky-shrouding totem. Run! There was no time to check the condition of his body, and there was only one thought in Ye Tian's mind, and that was to leave. But the space around him was confined by the spiky magic scorpion's aura, and he couldn't move at all. A formless pressure pressed inwards, as if it was going to directly crush him. Crack! Crack! A loud and clear sound resounded, and the spiky magic scorpion's huge claws collided with each other, like a death knell from hell, and a bloody and ruthless aura assaulted, enveloping the space. The bloody aura was almost condensed, and this was the most realistic aura of death. Swoosh! Swoosh! The spiky magic scorpion's figure arrived in the blink of an eye, and its huge claws were like two shocking giant swords, drawing a dazzling white light in the air, as if it could directly cut the space. Chapter 511. The spiky devil scorpion's huge claw swung down, and the bloody and violent aura turned into the most intense killing intent. Ye Tian sensed the huge killing intent, but his eyes were cold and murderous. There was no fear in his eyes. Ye Tian! Rui Qianyu saw Ye Tian in danger and couldn't help but exclaim. The eyes of the people below were filled with shock when they saw this. Even though they were 10,000 meters away, they could still feel the violent aura of the spiky devil scorpion. It was vast and suffocating. Nie Tian frowned slightly, but his eyes were terrifyingly calm. Even in the face of the most realistic killing intent, Nie Tian still maintained a terrifying calmness. He had faced too many life-threatening situations in his previous life, and his ability to deal with danger was far superior to ordinary people. At the moment of life and death, Nie Tian looked inside his body and was shocked to find that the raw star stone was completely dark, without the slightest bit of star power. This discovery stunned him for a moment, and cold sweat seeped out of his face. He then calmed down and continued to observe. The other 9 yuan meridians were also cracked, and the injuries were not small. Unable to use star power, and unable to use the 9 yuan meridians, Nie Tian was almost in a desperate situation. There was only one thing that could save him now, and that was the dragon scale energy. Yes, it was the dragon scale aura that his elder brother, Di Shi, left in his body. Nie Tian had already used the dragon scale energy twice. The first time was when he was fighting Wu Mang, and the dragon scale energy helped him forcefully break through the latter's aura. The second time was at the Rising Dragon platform, and the dragon scale energy had a strong restraining effect on the Rising Dragon platform's rage of the Rising Dragon, causing the divine dragons surging out of the Rising Dragon stone pillars to feel fear. This time, whether he could survive or not depended on the dragon scale energy. Boom! In the next moment, Nie Tian's body suddenly released a golden halo. The golden brilliance suddenly spread, and the frozen space around him actually loosened a little. The moment the dragon scale chi was released, Nie Tian's expression could not help but change slightly. He actually felt that the dragon scale chi was much stronger than before. Logically speaking, he had already used the dragon scale chi twice, so he should have weakened quite a bit. However, at this moment, instead of weakening, it was very strange. The dragon scale aura was released and formed a golden shield around Nie Tian, emitting a majestic dragon aura. 9-star dragon vein physique. Nie Tian suddenly understood that the reason why the dragon scale chi was so much stronger was because he had merged with the 9-star dragon vein. The 9-star dragon bloodline constitution made Nie Tian's physique different from ordinary people. He was in a half-human half-dragon state. The 9-star dragon vein allowed his body to produce the purest dragon energy, which strengthened the dragon scale energy in his body. The aura of the dragon scale came from the golden colossal dragon's dragon monarch's heart-protecting dragon scale. It was a dragon's reverse scale, and anyone who touched it would die. Swoosh! At this moment, the spiky magic scorpion's huge claw swung down, and a fierce aura pressed down like a raging wave. Nie Tian was like a broken leaf, instantly submerged in the rain of blood and wind. Whoosh! The fierce aura drove the air like a wind blade, and a dazzling white light flashed, hitting the dragon's scale shield. The hard shield had a horrifying crack, and then it instantly collapsed. The indestructible dragon scale shield still could not withstand the powerful aura of the spiky magic scorpion, but it blocked most of the frontal damage for Nie Tian. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The bloody wind swept across, and immediately there were several horrifying wounds on Nie Tian's body. Blood spurted out like a fountain. His body turned into a bloody shadow and fell from the sky. Just as he was about to land, a huge figure suddenly appeared, and then a clear voice sounded, Nie Tian. Cher. Hearing this voice, Nie Tian's whole body trembled. At this moment, Cher's voice was the most beautiful voice in the world to him. He used all his strength to turn his head, and saw a huge snake with a dragon horn flying in the air. On the huge snake's head stood a beautiful and peerless figure, Cher. Seeing the spiky magic scorpion in the sky, Shershu flicked its snake tongue, and its pupils suddenly shrank, revealing an instinctive fear. Its huge body rolled up, and after catching Nye Tian, it swung its tail and hurriedly ran for its life. The spiky magic scorpion was too strong. Even if it was Shirshu, it could only run away with its tail between its legs. Awo! Seeing that Nye Tian was saved, the spiky magic scorpion let out a strange cry, and a violent aura covered the space of thousands of meters. But it was too late. The huge snake was extremely fast, and after landing, it immediately disappeared. Rui Qianyu had already left when she saw the dragon scale shield on Nye Tian's body lit up. The spiky magic scorpion didn't catch anything and pounced on nothing. Rumble! 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 The spiky magic scorpion was extremely furious, and its huge claws fiercely slashed on the cliff. Pieces of the mountain suffered an unexpected disaster and collapsed one after another. Nye Tian had already returned to the ground. Looking at the furious spiky magic scorpion in the sky from afar, his eyes trembled, and he lightly spat out a word. Go! The spiky magic scorpion was now completely enraged. If they didn't leave now, when would they? Everyone jumped onto the huge snake's body, and under the cover of the huge trees, they left in a hurry. The spiky magic scorpion was in midair, venting its anger towards the cliff. This big guy seemed to have an inexplicable fear of the ground, and it didn't chase after them. After a moment, Nye Tian and the others returned to the Rainbow Valley. The huge snake guarded the entrance of the valley, and its gaze swept over Nye Tian. It was very surprised. The spiky magic scorpion even made it tremble with fear and didn't dare to fight. How could Nye Tian take away the fateful spirit ginseng in front of the spiky magic scorpion? It was really strange. She suddenly felt that maybe Nye Tian could really break the Netherworld Forest's restriction. However, Nye Tian's current state was terrible. His whole body was dripping with blood, and his torn clothes were stuck together with the blood, making him look like he was dying. His breathing was still stable, and at least his consciousness was awake. Nye Tian, are you okay? Cher jumped down from Xiaoxi's body. Seeing Nye Tian in such a miserable state, her beautiful face lost color, and her little face was a little pale. The others all looked over with concerned eyes. Nye Tian's injuries were very serious. There wasn't a single piece of intact skin on his body, and he had lost a lot of blood. It was hard to believe that a body of flesh and blood could last until now. I'm fine, I won't die yet. Nye Tian laughed at himself, and took out a few Spirit Dawn. They were all rank 5 Spirit Dawn, Blood Vitality Dawn, and Vitality Foundation Dawn. He gave a few to Tawny and Rui Qianyu, and swallowed a few himself. These Spirit Dawn were all found in Diao Jingde's spatial ring. As a rank 6 alchemist, he had stored hundreds of rank 5 Spirit Dawn, and dozens of rank 6 Spirit Dawn. These Spirit Dawn, even if sold, would be a terrifying amount of wealth. After swallowing the Spirit Dawn, Nye Tian's breathing gradually stabilized. Rui Qianyu took out the fateful spirit ginseng, and instantly, a thick and pungent comfortable smell was released, filling the entire valley. Fateful spirit ginseng, I finally got it. Nye Tian's eyes were burning, and his eyes were filled with unconcealable desire. Chapter 512. Then, the Tianming spirit ginseng was handed over to the Sherdao demon. Duanmu Lu carried Elder Yi into the cave, and the Sherdao demon followed him into the cave to treat Elder Ye's wounds. I need to have a rest, Nye Tian said, and entered the cave as well. He went to a corner and began to check his body. There were wounds all over his body, and there were bloody wounds all over his body which looked very horrible. Hiss! Nye Tian tore off the clothes that were stuck to the wounds and tore them again. It was so painful that he frowned and gasped. Every piece of clothes he tore off was accompanied by a piece of flesh. When all the clothes were taken off, Nye Tian didn't have a single piece of intact skin on his body. There were so many wounds that his bones could be seen, and blood was flowing all over his body again. Nye Tian, you. At this moment, a clear voice sounded. It was Cher who walked over. The moment she saw Nye Tian's wounds, she was stunned. She didn't expect that Nye Tian would be so seriously injured. Nye Tian hurriedly covered the vital parts of his body. At this moment, he wasn't wearing anything. However, Cher didn't care at all. She walked straight to Nye Tian and stared at him for a long time. Her delicate face was hesitant, as if she was thinking about something. After a while, she nodded slightly as if she had made a decision. She put her finger near her mouth and bit it gently. What? Seeing Shui Er's actions, Nye Tian couldn't help but be stunned. Because he saw that Shui Er's blood wasn't red, but white. That's right. White blood, which was very strange. Nye Tian was dazed for a while, and didn't realize it until a few seconds later. Cher walked over, and was less than a meter away from him. Being so close to the girl in front of him, Nye Tian felt as if his blood was boiling and his blood was boiling. This girl was too beautiful, so beautiful that it was breathtaking, so beautiful that it was suffocating. Her entire body, from head to toe, was perfect to the extreme. She could satisfy all the fantasies men had of women. At this moment, Nye Tian suddenly thought of something. A surge of essence force gushed out from his body, transforming into a faint glow that covered the area below his waist and above his knees. Cher's expression was very calm. Her eyes were as clear as a baby's, pure and flawless. She gently raised her finger. The white blood floated in the air and turned into a white flame. What a powerful life force! Nye Tian could feel a powerful and scorching life force from the white flames, and couldn't help but be slightly moved. The herb with the strongest vitality he had ever seen was the purple dragon beard. Because of its strong vitality, the purple dragon beard was able to grow from a Tier 2 herb to a Tier 7 herb. This was the importance of vitality. However, the vitality of the purple dragon beard and the vitality that Nye Tian felt from the white flames were simply worlds apart. One was on the ground while the other was on the sky. They could not be compared at all. Such a powerful life force, Nye Tian had only ever felt it from one place, and that was the Astral Origin Stone. The Astral Origin Stone represented a world, a total of 900 billion stars, and the 9 heavenly rivers. However, Cher only spilled a drop of blood, and it actually had such a strong vitality. It was truly terrifying. Just as Nye Tian was in shock, the white flames suddenly surged into his body. Immediately, a comfortable feeling spread throughout his body. Every inch of his skin and every piece of his bones seemed to have been reborn, and actually became lively in an instant. Nye Tian felt strands of strange white essence force circulating in his meridians. It actually had the miraculous effect of nourishing the blood vessels and strengthening the bones. After a moment, Nye Tian actually discovered that the 9 damaged meridians in his body had actually recovered in the blink of an eye. He did not see wrongly. The 9 meridians had indeed recovered. Too inconceivable. That white flames actually had such a miraculous effect. Even Tier 9 herbs could not compare. What was even stranger was that the white flames were actually formed from a drop of Cher's blood. Cher, who exactly was she? Why did her blood contain such a strong vitality? Nye Tian was extremely shocked. He was unable to calm down for a long time. Nye Tian, are you feeling better? Cher saw that the wounds on Nye Tian's body had already formed a blood clot. Her small face relaxed a lot, and there was actually a trace of blush on her face, as if she had realized something. Nye Tian hurriedly put on his clothes. Although his face was still somewhat pale, it had already improved a lot. Cher, thank you very much. Nye Tian knew that Cher was definitely hiding a huge secret, but he would not ask. If one day Cher was willing to tell him, she would naturally tell him. Cher nodded, as if she was thinking of something. She was actually a little shy, hemming and hawing, unable to speak. Cher, are you okay? Nye Tian did not know what to say, and could only ask stiffly. Cher took a deep breath. Her face was somewhat embarrassed, and her forehead was dripping with sweat. After thinking for a long time, she finally said, I want the same clothes as Sister Wuyo and Sister Royu. Nie Tian's face slightly stiffened. This girl was sweating all over. After fussing for such a long time, she actually wanted clothes. It was a woman's nature to love beauty. Cher was wearing the clothes that Nie Tian gave her, which were men's clothes, while Gu Wuyo and Rui Qinyu were wearing women's clothes. For other people, perhaps this was not a big deal, but for Cher, who had never worn women's clothes before, it was a big deal. Just wait here, Nie Tian said, then ran out of the room. After a moment, Nie Tian returned, and in his hands, there were a total of 10 sets of women's clothes. Wow! Cher cried out in surprise. She seemed very excited and very happy. Gu Wuyo and Rui Qinyu were both martial artists, and even if they did not carry 100 sets of clothes with them, there were at least dozens of sets. It was certainly not too much to ask for a few sets of clothes to give to Cher. When martial artists were training, any casual fight would cause their clothes to be damaged, so they would carry a vast amount of clothes as backup. In Nie Tian's interspatial ring, there were over 100 sets of clothes, and once a set was damaged, he would change to another set. After receiving the clothes, Cher did not hesitate and did not avoid at all, and directly changed in front of Nie Tian. Nie Tian was speechless and turned around to leave. I have changed. Cher's voice sounded again, and she seemed to be unusually excited. Nie Tian turned around and was stunned for a moment, as if a stranger appeared in front of him. The Cher in front of him looked to be around 13 or 14 years old. She was wearing a purple dress with short sleeves, and her snow-white and delicate wrists were exposed. A blue silk belt around her waist perfectly accentuated the girl's graceful and exquisite curves. Her delicate little face was faintly sparkling, like a shining jade, and people could not help but want to pounce on her and take a few hundred bites. Coupled with the jet-black hair that reached her waist, it gave people a feeling of a flawless white jade, like a lotus flower that had just emerged from the water. What moved people the most was that pair of limpid black eyes, as if they were an angel that had fallen into the mortal world. It gave people a kind of touch that could purify the soul. Beautiful, too beautiful. Chapter 5:13. Nie Tian, am I pretty? Cher saw that Nie Tian was stunned and asked worriedly, as if she was afraid that her new outfit would disappoint the young man in front of her. Pretty, pretty. Nie Tian swallowed and only reacted after a long time. Too pretty. Really? Cher giggled. She had the purest smile of a young girl. Nie Tian nodded slightly. The young girl in front of him was as pure as an angel. Just looking at her gave him a sense of hope and excitement. 3 days later, Nie Tian and the others appeared at the edge of the Destiny Forest. They were going back to the territory of the Serpent Men. At this moment, Elder Yi was getting better under the treatment of the Destiny Spirit Ginseng. His injuries were slowly recovering, and even his damaged swordsmanship cultivation showed signs of recovering. Nie Tian's injuries were also getting better. His Yuan meridians were completely recovered, and the wounds on his body were all healed. He had the 9-star dragon vein physique, and with the help of Cher's strange blood power, his recovery was even faster. More importantly, the 10th Yuan meridian, the Star Origin Stone, showed signs of recovery. In the Xing River, the Realm Origin formation reappeared, and the damaged Star Origin Stone slowly recovered. However, the speed was very slow, and no one knew how long it would take for it to completely recover. The side effects of consuming the level 6 Yuan Burst Pill were not completely gone. Even if Nie Tian had the chaotic original coffin, it would still take at least half a month to recover. Lord Nie Tian, Sha Qianlang, the general of the Serpent Men, had been waiting outside the Destiny Forest for nearly 10 days, but Nie Tian hadn't come out. He had thought that something had happened to him, and now that Nie Tian had appeared, he was extremely excited. General Qianlang, let's go back. Your Empress must be anxiously waiting for us. Nie Tian turned around and looked at the Destiny Forest. He murmured in his heart, Cher, I will definitely break the restriction of the forest. Nie Tian promised Cher that he would return to the Destiny Forest after seeing the Empress. Naga Territory, Palace Hall. Empress Medusa sat upright in the main hall. Her expression was calm, but her heart was in turmoil, and she was anxious and uneasy. It had been close to 10 days since Nie Tian and the others entered the Destiny Forest, but there was still no news of them. This caused her to be extremely perturbed. Of course, she wasn't worried about the safety of Nie Tian and the others. It was just that, if something happened to Nie Tian, she wouldn't be able to get the Destiny Spirit Ginseng, and her life would be in danger. Did they fail? A hint of nervousness appeared on Queen Medusa's delicate face. She did not want to continue thinking about it. If Nie Tian failed, then she would not live for long. Guards. With this in mind, Medusa's deep voice resounded throughout the hall. She wanted to personally go to the Forest of Destiny to investigate. Even if she couldn't enter the forest, she would be able to know the situation of Nie Tian and the others as soon as possible. Your Majesty, Lord Nie Tian is back. Just when Empress Medusa stood up, a shout of surprise came from outside the hall. Quick, invite him into the hall. The unexpected surprise made Empress Medusa extremely excited, and a hint of redness appeared on her beautiful face. After a while, the figures of Nie Tian and the others appeared in the hall. Nie Tian, you're finally back. When Empress Medusa saw Nie Tian's figure clearly, she couldn't hide her excitement and came out to welcome him from afar. Your Majesty. Nie Tian glanced at Medusa, but the corner of his mouth raised into a playful smile. He said coldly, Your Majesty, do you have anything to explain to me? Medusa was slightly startled, but then she smiled and said, Mr. Nie Tian, why do you say that? Elder Yi and the others behind Nie Tian were also stunned. They didn't understand what he was talking about. Why do I say that? Nie Tian replied with a question. He smiled and said, Since Mo Feng and the others appeared in the Destiny Forest. Mo Feng and the others didn't enter the Destiny Forest with Nie Tian, but they appeared later. It was clearly not a coincidence. The chaotic abyss was huge, but Mo Feng and the others had appeared in the Destiny Forest. This was clearly not normal. Thinking that Mo Feng and the others had been sent away by Empress Medusa, it wasn't difficult to guess that this matter was related to Medusa. Medusa was definitely worried about Nie Tian, so she secretly sent Mo Feng and the others to the other entrance of the Destiny Forest, causing them to encounter each other. Medusa couldn't help but tremble when she sensed the anger in Nie Tian's eyes. Soon after, she smiled and said, Mr. Nie Tian, Mo Feng and the others appearing in the Destiny Forest was an accident. If you feel that this matter has something to do with this Empress, then this Empress will apologize to you. Medusa's smile was like a flower, and her tone was gentle. It was obvious that she had a guilty conscience. She hadn't expected Nie Tian to be so meticulous that he had figured everything out. She had indeed deliberately arranged for Mo Feng and the others to enter the Destiny Forest. She just wanted to leave a backup plan aside from Nie Tian. But she didn't expect that it was this backup plan that nearly caused the deaths of Nie Tian and the others. Apologize? Nie Tian smiled and said in a loud voice, Sure. I want to hear how Her Majesty plans to apologize. When mentioning Mo Feng's matter, Nie Tian's goal was to squeeze more information out of Medusa. Although Nie Tian had obtained the Destiny Spirit Ginseng, half of its medicinal efficacy had been used to save Elder Yi, so only the other half was left. Although it was only ordinary medicinal efficacy, it was enough to suppress Empress Medusa's illusory spirit seal. Originally, Nie Tian could use the other half of the medicinal efficacy on himself. As long as he absorbed the power of the Destiny Spirit Ginseng, not only could he eliminate the side effects of the Tier 6 Yuan Burst Pill, but he could also restore the raw Star Stone. But he was a man of his word. Since he promised to obtain the Spirit Ginseng for Medusa, he naturally had to keep his promise. Empress Medusa saw that Nye Tian wanted to raise conditions again. Not only was she not angry, but she became very happy instead. Because she knew that since Nye Tian dared to raise conditions, it undoubtedly meant that he had obtained the destiny spirit ginseng. If he did not get anything, forget about raising conditions, it was uncertain whether Nye Tian would dare to return to the Naga territory. Mr. Nye Tian, you're an alchemist, right? Empress Medusa's gaze swept over Nye Tian, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, looking like she had a card up her sleeve. Nye Tian nodded slightly, waiting for Empress Medusa to continue. Empress Medusa smiled faintly and said, I have an item that is the favorite of you alchemists. I am willing to take it out as an apology to Mr. Nye Tian. As soon as she finished speaking, Empress Medusa stretched out her palm, and a gray sheepskin scroll appeared. This is... Nye Tian saw the sheepskin scroll in Empress Medusa's hand, and felt a strong aura. His expression stiffened, and an unconcealable desire appeared in his eyes. Empress Medusa smiled faintly, and unfolded the sheepskin scroll in her hand. It was a map, and there was a white halo on it, flowing continuously. Demon Fire Map. Inside the chaotic original coffin, Demon King Corpse Luo screamed, and his small eyes widened. That's right, the sheepskin scroll that appeared in Empress Medusa's hand was too familiar to Nye Tian. It was the legendary Demon Fire Map. Chapter 514. When Nye Tian saw the small words, his eyes trembled and his expression stiffened. He was very familiar with the seventh demonic fire. It was the moth dragon's heavenly flame. In his previous life, Nye Tian had seen the moth dragon's heavenly flame and had the opportunity to merge with it. However, at that time, he had been young and arrogant. He had only thought about the boundary of the universe with the first demonic fire and had not taken the moth dragon's heavenly flame seriously. That was why he had missed the opportunity to merge with the demonic fire. After that, he had wanted to look for the moth dragon's heavenly flame, but he could not find it. Who would have thought that he would encounter the demonic fire diagram here? Furthermore, it was the one used to track the seventh demonic fire, the moth dragon's heavenly flame. You recognize the demonic fire diagram? Seeing Nye Tian's reaction, Queen Medusa was slightly surprised. Nye Tian clearly knew about the demonic fire diagram, which was something she had not expected. The demonic fire diagram was an ultimate treasure that could sense the location of the demonic fire between heaven and earth. It was impressive that Nye Tian knew about it at such a young age. What Medusa did not know was that not only did Nye Tian know about the demonic fire diagram, but he had also seen it and even had one. The demonic fire was the favorite of alchemists. Different demonic fires had different characteristics and could be used to refine pills of a higher grade than ordinary pills. However, the demonic fire was an extremely violent existence, and the difficulty of merging with it was beyond imagination. Last time, the 13th demonic fire, the Doomsday Flame, had almost killed Nye Tian, let alone the 7th demonic fire, which was even more powerful than the Doomsday Flame. With his current strength, even if he found the moth dragon's heavenly flame, he might not be able to merge it. Since ancient times, countless people had tried to merge with the demonic fire, but most of them had been devoured by the demonic fire and ended up with their souls destroyed. Nye Tian did not want to follow in their footsteps. The last time he had provoked the Doomsday Flame was to suppress Jean de Bao's 3,000 seals of demons and gods. This time, he would not provoke the demonic fire so easily. However, he naturally had to accept the demonic fire diagram. After all, it was Queen Medusa's kind intentions. If he did not accept it, it would be disappointing. With this in mind, Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, "Since your Majesty is so sincere in apologizing, I will of course not pursue this matter any further. The matter of Mo Feng will be treated as if it never happened." As Nye Tian spoke, he reached out for the demonic fire diagram. However, Queen Medusa merely smiled and withdrew her hand. How could Nye Tian not understand what she meant? He didn't pretend and directly took out the spirit ginseng of destiny and said, "Your Majesty, this is what you want, the spirit ginseng of destiny." With the appearance of the spirit ginseng, a 7-colored halo of light rippled out, almost filling the entire hall. Rich heaven and earth spiritual energy spread out, making people feel refreshed. 9 revolutions spirit ginseng. You really got it. All of Queen Medusa's attention was focused on the destiny spirit ginseng in Nye Tian's hand. Her face revealed an unconcealable passion. Nye Tian liked to call it the spirit ginseng of destiny, while Queen Medusa liked to call it the 9 revolutions spirit ginseng. Although she had already guessed that Nye Tian had obtained the spirit ginseng, she still felt her heart tremble when she saw it with her own eyes. The 9 revolutions spirit ginseng was a miraculous flower that could save her life. How could she not be moved when it was right in front of her? Mr. Nye, take the demonic fire diagram. Queen Medusa directly threw the demonic fire diagram to Nye Tian. The latter smiled faintly and offered the spirit ginseng of destiny. Nye Tian checked the demonic fire diagram and carefully put it away after confirming that there were no mistakes. Queen Medusa carefully looked at the spirit ginseng of destiny for a long time before finally putting it away. At this time, Nye Tian said, "Your Majesty, my friend and I would like to cultivate in the chaotic abyss for a period of time. Is there a problem?" When Nye Tian left the Forest of Destiny, he had already discussed with everyone that he was prepared to stay in the chaotic abyss for a period of time. The injuries on his body needed a period of time to recover. Most importantly, the power of the stars in the raw star stone needed to awaken for a second time, which would take at least several months. Moreover, the others also needed time to refine the power of the altars and medicine cauldrons. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the chaotic abyss was much denser than the outside world. It was a good place for cultivation. Another reason was that Nye Tian was worried that if he left the chaotic abyss now, he would be chased by the people of Chaos City. Therefore, staying here for a period of time was undoubtedly the best plan. No problem. Medusa didn't hesitate and immediately agreed. As far as she was concerned, befriending someone like Nye Tian would only bring her benefits, no harm. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Nye Tian nodded and turned to look at Tang 13. The latter stood up and said, "Your Majesty, I have some questions to ask you." Medusa frowned slightly. When she saw Tang 13's face clearly, her eyes couldn't help but tremble. She immediately said, "The ghost eye. You know about the ghost eye?" Tang 13 and Nye Tian were stunned at the same time. They didn't think that Queen Medusa would know about the ghost eye. Medusa's frown deepened. She seemed to remember something and asked, "What is your name?" "Tang 13, Tang 13 answered. "Who is Tang Duan to you?" Queen Medusa asked again. "You know my father?" Tang 13's expression changed as she asked back. Queen Medusa was stunned again. She couldn't hide her surprise. After a while, she said, "No wonder you look so similar to him." As expected, Queen Medusa really did know Tang 13's father, Tang Duan. "Your Majesty, my father came to the chaotic abyss more than a decade ago. What happened?" Tang 13 asked hurriedly. This time, he came to the chaotic abyss, on one hand to train and on the other, to find out why his father died. Also, to find out Tang Yuyu's background. More than a decade ago, which was the last time the chaotic abyss opened, Tang 13's father, Tang Duan, entered the abyss. Although he eventually came out, he died a few days later. At that time, Tang 13 was only a few years old and didn't know the details. Tang Duan brought out a young girl from the chaotic abyss. That was Tang Yuyu. Tang 13 wanted to know what happened in the chaotic abyss that year. Looking at Queen Medusa's reaction, she seemed to know what happened that year. Queen Medusa hesitated for a while but still asked, "Tang Duan died, right?" "Yes." Tang 13 nodded solemnly. A serious look appeared on Empress Medusa's face, as if she was very sad about Tang Duan's death. She said, "I don't want too many people to know about this. 3 days later, come find me in the main hall." Okay. Tang 13 nodded heavily. Nie Tian felt strange. Looking at Queen Medusa's reaction, it seemed that something serious really happened that year. However, this matter was closely related to Tang 13. Since Queen Medusa only wanted to tell Tang 13, Nie Tian couldn't do anything. "Mr. Nie." Queen Medusa seemed to know what Nie Tian was thinking and said, "If you are interested, you can come with Tang 13. Chapter 5:15. 3 days later, in the Naga's palace. Empress Medusa sat in the main seat of the palace. She did not wear a phoenix coronet or robe, but rather a normal outfit. 2 people sat below her. They were Nie Tian and Tang 13. Empress Medusa had returned to normal. The spirit ginseng not only helped her suppress the demonic seal of illusionary spirits, but it also increased her strength. Though she tried to hide her aura, the aura of a powerful cultivator could still be seen. She kept her promise and helped Elder Yi remove the demonic seal and removed the death chain that had tortured Elder Yi for 40 years. When the death chain was removed, even though Elder Yi had a heart of stone, he could not hold back his tears. 40 years of suffering, 40 years of suppression. Who could understand his pain if they did not experience it themselves? Elder Yi and the others were cultivating in seclusion. Tawny left the chaotic abyss first. If she did not return in time, the hidden court master would destroy her red lotus chi. Nie Tian would not forget his promise to Tawny. He would definitely get the red lotus chi back for her. At this moment, Nie Tian and Tang 13 had appeared in the Great Hall to ask about Tang Duan. Empress Medusa's expression was a bit serious, as if she had remembered something. After a long time, she calmed down a bit and said, "Tang 13, if you have any questions, ask away. If I can answer them, I will definitely answer." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Tang 13 nodded and asked, "After my father left the chaotic abyss, he returned to the Tang clan. A few days later, he died mysteriously. I want to know who killed him." More than 10 years ago, Tang Duan returned to the Tang clan from the chaotic abyss. He had been unconscious ever since. Tang Hao invited all the alchemists in Shumilingdu, but no one knew why Tang Duan was unconscious. A few days later, Tang Duan's body started to fester. When he died, there was not a single piece of skin left intact. Even his bones turned black. In the end, he turned into ashes. Because of this, Tang Duan was seen as a taboo in the Tang clan, and no one was allowed to mention him. Empress Medusa looked at the youth who had asked the question. His eyes and appearance were so similar to Tang Duan's. Unknowingly, her eyes started to tear up. "Your Majesty?" Tang 13 noticed Medusa's strange reaction and called out. Nie Tian, on the other hand, frowned slightly as he thought, could it be that something had happened between Tang Duan and Medusa back then? Medusa realized that she had lost her composure and immediately adjusted her emotions to return to normal. She said, "The chaotic abyss is an ancient battlefield of the ancient times, and it has its own space-time inside. The chaotic abyss wasn't only open to the 3,000 small worlds, it was also open to the netherworld demonic world. Therefore, every time the chaotic abyss opened normally, not only would there be human cultivators entering the abyss, but there would also be people from the demon race. Your father died at the hands of the devil race." "Demon!" Tang 13 was so excited that she jumped up. He had heard from Tang how that the chaotic abyss was a secret passage between the human world and the demonic world. He did not expect it to be true. "Your Majesty, can you tell me more clearly who killed Tang Duan? Is it related to the hidden soul clan of the demonic world?" Nie Tian frowned slightly and asked. "Hm?" Medusa's expression stiffened. "You know about the hidden soul clan?" Nie Tian knew about the hidden soul clan because of Tang Yuyu. The latter was a member of the hidden soul clan. However, only he and the corpse demon king knew about this. Even Tang Yuyu himself did not know. From Medusa's reaction, it seemed that there was a deep secret behind Tang Duan's death. Medusa hesitated and finally said, "I'm sorry, this is all I can tell you about this. If you want to know more, you can ask me when you are strong enough." Strong enough? Tang 13's expression was agitated as he shouted, "Your Majesty, what kind of strength is considered strong enough?" "At least the evolution realm," Medusa said in a low voice. Her eyes were sharp. The evolution realm. Tang 13 was shocked. As if she had lost all her faith, she sat down dejectedly. It was not impossible to reach the evolution realm, but she did not know how long it would take. Seeing Tang 13's reaction, Medusa's expression softened. "There are some things I am not telling you for your own good. Without the strength, even if you know the truth, there is nothing you can do. You will only be in more pain." After that, Medusa turned around and waved her hand, signaling Nie Tian and Tang 13 to leave. Seeing that Medusa did not want to say more, Nie Tian gave up and left the palace with Tang 13. "Tang 13, you." Walking out of the palace, Nie Tian saw Tang 13's serious expression. He wanted to say something but was interrupted. Tang 13 clenched her fists and shouted, "Your Majesty is right. Without strength, knowing the truth is useless. Isn't it just the evolution realm? I can do it." Seeing that Tang 13 had regained her confidence, Nie Tian smiled and did not say more. In the following days, Nie Tian stayed in the chaos abyss. Every few days, he would go back to see Cher. Every time he was with Cher, Nie Tian felt the most relaxed. He didn't have any burdens or misgivings. Being with an angel made him feel like he was free. Shui was a girl who had never interacted with anyone before. She had learned many things from Nie Tian, and had come to know many things. The days he had spent in the chaos abyss could be considered the happiest he had ever had in his entire life. But happy times are always short. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. Nie Tian's injuries were completely healed and the damaged raw star stone was restored. Nie Tian reached the first level of the evolution realm and the raw star stone awakened the power of 200 million stars. In half a year, Nie Tian's strength had only increased by one level. This was mainly because he spent most of his time restoring the raw star stone. Moreover, from the 9th level of the giant spirit realm to the first level of the evolution realm, there was a threshold. Many warriors needed to spend years or even decades to reach it. Nie Tian only used half a year, which was very fast. But compared to his previous speed, it was still a lot slower. When Nie Tian bid farewell to Cher, he left the phantom snow fox by her side. The mirage snow fox recorded the images of the two of them together. He told Snow that he would reappear the moment the mirage snow fox's recording disappeared. The phantom snow fox's recording could last for several years. Nie Tian would increase his strength during this time. The next time he returned to the chaos abyss would be the time to break the seal. Elder Yi and the others also finished their closed-door training. Their strength had greatly increased. At this time, everyone arrived at a familiar place. It was the place where the rising dragon killing array was. "Everyone, this Empress will open the channel to leave the chaos abyss." Queen Medusa smiled and a green liquid appeared in her palm. It spun in the air and turned into a small dark green dragon. At this moment, Nie Tian's complexion suddenly changed. He suddenly felt the dragon scale energy in his body suddenly become active. Chapter 5:16. A small green dragon floated above Queen Medusa's palm. At this moment, the dragon scale aura in Nie Tian's body suddenly became active. This reminded him of something, the dragon's spring vein. She had said that the dragon scale aura could automatically sense the existence of the dragon spring vein when he injected the dragon scale aura into Nie Tian's body. The dragon spring vein was said to be the sacred object of the divine dragon clan. It was what she had asked Nie Tian to find. Nie Tian looked at the small green dragon in Queen Medusa's hand and tensed up. He could sense that this small green dragon must be closely related to the legendary dragon Spring Vein. The small green dragon obviously couldn't be the dragon Spring Vein, but it must be related to it. Otherwise, the dragon scale aura wouldn't have sensed it. Whoosh! At this moment, Medusa raised her hand and the small green dragon soared into the sky. It circled in the air and directly tore a crack in the void. A space-time gate immediately appeared. "Everyone, please!" Queen Medusa called back the small green dragon and pointed at the space-time gate. What a terrifying technique! Everyone's expression changed. Tearing the void with just one hand, Queen Medusa's strength was indeed heaven-defying. Tian frowned slightly. He could see that it wasn't Queen Medusa's strength that was powerful, but that the small green dragon was incomparably strange. Just as he was about to speak, Queen Medusa directly handed over the green liquid in her palm and said, "Mr. Nye, the green dragon liquid is yours." Tian was slightly stunned, but he immediately understood. He had made an agreement with Queen Medusa. After obtaining the spirit ginseng of destiny, the latter would allow him to freely enter and exit the chaotic abyss, and the green dragon liquid was the thing that allowed him to do so. Tian put away the green dragon liquid and felt the rich aura of the dragon Spring Vein. The dragon scale aura in his body became more active. Tian frowned and asked, "Your Majesty, I want to know where the green dragon liquid comes from." It was obvious that the green dragon liquid was closely related to the dragon Spring Vein. If he knew the source of the former, he might be able to find some clues about the latter. When Empress Medusa heard Tian ask about the green dragon liquid, her originally calm face instantly became gloomy. She said in a cold voice, "This is the secret of my Naga race. Forgive me for not divulging it." Tian's eyes narrowed. He didn't expect the other party to have such a big reaction. After thinking for a moment, he could only give up. Everyone no longer hesitated and leaped into the space-time rift. Tian felt a flash of white light in front of him. When he opened his eyes again, his surroundings had completely changed. In front of him was a dense forest. This is the horizontal sky mountain range. Elder Yi observed for a moment and recognized the place. After half a year of seclusion, Elder Ye's strength had risen to the 4th tier of the divine wheel. Although he was still far from his peak strength, it was already very good. Moreover, he was confident that within a few years, he would definitely be able to return to his peak and once again stand at the peak of the 3,000 small world. Tian, I still have something to do. I'll take my leave first, Rui Qinyu said directly without any superfluous words. Tian looked at Rui Qinyu. He knew that it was impossible for the latter to return to Tianluo City with him. Even if he forced her to stay, it would be meaningless. Tian could only smile. After Rui Qinyu bid farewell to the others, her figure flashed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. "Rui Qinyu, perhaps we will meet again," Tian muttered to himself as he looked in the direction where the figure disappeared. After half a year of seclusion, Rui Qinyu had completely refined the power of the medicine cauldron on the sacrificial altar in her body. Her current strength was already at the 8th tier of the primordial spirit realm. With this strength, even in the entire 3,000 small worlds, she would be considered an expert. Moreover, she also had the rainbow pupils, so Tian wasn't worried about her safety. Tian, all good things must come to an end. I'll take my leave too. As soon as Rui Qinyu left, Elder Yi also prepared to leave. Elder Yi, what do you plan to do next? A trace of worry flashed in Tian's eyes as he asked. He was worried that Elder Yi would directly seek revenge on the owner of Lin Xian Tian Pavilion. With Elder Ye's current strength, although he was already very strong, it was still impossible for him to seek revenge. Tian, don't worry. Although I'm called Frenzied Blade, I'm not a brainless person. I know how strong I am, and now is not the time for revenge. I'm just looking for a few old friends to catch up. Elder Yi saw that Tian was worried and laughed. Nie Tian nodded. Since that was the case, he was naturally relieved. Elder Yi didn't delay any longer. He leaped into the air and instantly disappeared. Nie Tian saw the figure disappear in the air and suddenly thought of Qiushan, but Elder Ye's figure was already gone. He still didn't know what the relationship between Qiushan and Elder Yi was. He originally wanted to ask, but he didn't have the chance now. Next, Nie Tian prepared to make a trip back to Chuyang City. Half a year had passed, and he didn't know what the current situation of the Great Chu Empire was like. Zhang Xiaoi happened to be on the way, so they went together. One day later, Chuyang City's largest tea house, Yangsheng Tea House. 4 young figures walked into the tea house and directly went to the second floor. These 4 figures were Nie Tian, Duanmulu, Gu Wuyo, and Zhang Xiaoi. The other 2 guards of Battle Cloud sect returned to the sect first to report the situation so that Battle Cloud sect master wouldn't worry. Just as he returned to Chuyang City, Nie Tian heard some important news. Great Chu State Preceptor Tawny mysteriously disappeared half a year ago, Crown Prince Wang Haorui was deposed, and the Great Chu Emperor came out to take charge of the state affairs again. Connecting these 3 things together, Nie Tian guessed that Tawny probably didn't return to the Great Chu Empire after leaving the chaotic abyss. Wang Haorui, that fool, would definitely give himself away if he went alone, and was controlled by the Emperor and deposed. No matter what, these pieces of news were good news for the Great Chu Empire. And now, the people in the tea house were discussing another important matter that had just been announced. Great Chu appointed a new crown prince. This new crown prince was none other than the Xian king, Wang Haoshuan. Nie Tian and the others found a place near the window, and the 4 sat down together. They ordered 2 pots of good tea and a few different side dishes. Nie Tian sipped his tea while listening to the conversation of the people in the tea house. Although these people's voices were very low, it was very clear to Nie Tian. There was only one topic that everyone was discussing, and that was the matter of Wang Haoshuan becoming the new crown prince. Great Chu appointed a new crown prince again, and it's actually His Highness the Xian King. I didn't expect that the position of crown prince would go back to His Highness the Xian King. His Highness the Xian King was the most talented among the many princes. This position of crown prince should be his. Yeah. His Highness the Xian King's talent and strength are excellent, and he's also humble. He's much better than the former crown prince. That former crown prince only knows how to bully people. He should have been deposed long ago. The group of people spoke one after another, and actually all thought that Wang Haoshuan becoming crown prince was something that was to be expected. Sigh. I'm afraid Xian King isn't much better than the former crown prince. Suddenly, a sigh and an extremely discordant voice sounded. A man said while sipping his tea. His voice was neither loud nor soft, and he didn't have the intention of avoiding everyone. Chapter 5:17. A cold voice was heard, followed by a strong murderous intent. Several cold gazes locked onto the person who had spoken. The crowd turned to look at the source of the voice. 3 figures walked over slowly. The one in the lead was an old man in luxurious clothes. He wore a jade ring on his thumb that kept turning. His gaze was extremely cold. Behind him were 2 middle-aged men. They followed him quietly, appearing extremely respectful. "Brat, repeat what you just said." The old man's cold voice sounded again. He stared coldly at the person who had spoken. The other person's expression stiffened slightly. He said, "Sir, the crown prince has just been appointed. As a citizen of the Chu kingdom, why can't I casually evaluate the future crown prince?" "Casually evaluate?" The old man's expression darkened. He said coldly, "Do you think the crown prince is someone you can casually evaluate? Someone, come and pull his tongue out." As the cold voice sounded, a figure behind the old man flashed out. He turned into a phantom and flew to the person's side. Then, there was a shrill scream, and the air was covered in blood. The person who had spoken had a mouth full of blood. He howled like a pig being slaughtered, but he could not speak. When everyone saw this, they were stunned. The person's tongue was really pulled out. Just because he said something bad about the new crown prince, his tongue was gone. These people were really overbearing. Scram! The old man looked coldly at the person and squeezed out a word. The person was so scared that his face turned pale. He covered his mouth and left. His Highness Xian King is the crown prince. He is the future king of the Chu kingdom. Who dares to criticize the future crown prince? This person is an example. The old man's hawk-like gaze swept across the crowd. His cold voice was like thunder, resounding in everyone's hearts. The surrounding people were terrified. They were glad that they had said good things about His Highness Xian King. Otherwise, they would not be able to keep their tongues. The new crown prince was indeed a new official. He only wanted people to say good things about him and could not say anything bad about him. He was even more overbearing than the previous crown prince. At this time, the crowd thought of what the person had said. It was very reasonable. The new crown prince was probably not much better than the previous crown prince. As soon as the old man finished speaking, the entire place fell into a dead silence. No one dared to speak again. The new crown prince has just been crowned. Everyone is discussing his merits and demerits, and expressing their opinions. Even if all of you feel that he's wrong, there's no need to cut out his tongue, right? However, right at this moment, a fierce voice resounded out, and every single word was clear and resounded without the slightest bit of cowardice. Everyone's faces stiffened as they looked towards the source of the voice. The person who spoke was actually a teenager with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. This person was none other than Duanmu Lu. Duanmu Lu was young after all. His sense of justice was overflowing, and he was the first to speak up. Is this kid a fool? Trying to be a hero at a time like this? Isn't he courting death? The crowd looked over, puzzled. This old man was obviously one of the new crown prince's men. He had already cut off one person's tongue, so why would he mind cutting off another? For Duanmu Lu to jump out at this time was tantamount to seeking his own death. The old man slowly turned around and looked at Duanmu Lu. His face became even more gloomy, and a cold gleam shot out from his eyes. Immediately after, he sneered and said in a cold voice, "Cutting off his tongue is for his own good, to let him remember. But you, how dare you talk back to I in front of everyone? You deserve to die." Swoosh. As soon as the words fell, the old man's body shook, and a fierce chi whistled out, turning into a black ghostly claw in the air, aiming for Duanmu Lu's neck. It was as if he wanted his life. Nie Tian saw the old man's action, and his eyes trembled slightly. This old man was overbearing, but his strength was very strong. He was actually at the 5th level of the true essence realm. After half a year of seclusion, Duanmu Lu had refined the power of the medicine cauldron in his body, and his strength had reached the 9th level of the giant soul. At his age, reaching the 9th level of the giant soul at the age of 16 was enough to be considered an amazing talent. But to contend against the old man in front of him, he was still too weak. If no one else did anything, with just Duanmu Lu's strength, he would be severely injured even if he didn't die after this move. Seeking death. Nie Tian spat out 2 words. Just as he was about to stand up, someone had already made a move. It wasn't Gu Wuyo, but Zhang Xiaoi. Zhang Xiaoi stood up abruptly, and with a move of his body, he stretched out his palm and forcefully withstood the old man's move. Moreover, his body didn't move at all, like a boulder. He shouted, "Old man, who do you think you are? How dare you touch my brother?" Chuyang City was the imperial city of the Great Chu Empire, and the Great Chu Empire was in existence dependent on the Battle Cloud sect. Therefore, Zhang Xiaoi, the young master of the Battle Cloud sect, was considered to be in his territory. Of course, he couldn't tolerate being bullied on his home ground. Besides, Duanmu Lu was very right. When the new crown prince was crowned, all the people of Great Chu had the right to judge their merits. For the old man to not allow others to speak, he was the real arrogant, despotic, and unreasonable one. Zhang Xiaoyi was currently at the third level of the true essence realm. Coupled with the battle cloud overlord body, even if he was up against a fifth-level true essence realm martial artist, he wouldn't be afraid. My brother only said what he should have said, and you want to take his life right away. I would like to ask, who gave you the right to do so? Zhang Xiaoyi shouted loudly, looking like he was going to interrogate the old man. The old man frowned slightly, as if surprised by Zhang Xiaoyi's strength. But he quickly calmed down and said coldly, I just said that His Highness Xian King is the future Emperor of Great Chu. Talking about the Crown Prince is a crime, and talking back to I in public deserves death. Hearing the old man's words, Zhang Xiaoyi's face darkened instantly. This old man was too arrogant. Who did he think he was, the family head of the 4 great clans? No one could talk back to him. Anyone who did should die. He really didn't know where a mere 5th-level true essence realm martial artist got his arrogance and confidence from. You, fighting me in public, deserve death even more. At this moment, the old man's voice sounded again. His figure moved, and he actually appeared less than 5 meters away from Zhang Xiaoyi. He struck out with his palm, and a huge aura pressed down, accompanied by a wave of black yin qi. Be careful! Nie Tian suddenly smelled a pungent odor and immediately sensed that something was wrong. He warned, but it was too late. Bang! Zhang Xiaoyi struck out in a panic and met the old man's palm in the air. The sudden burst of energy from both of them directly smashed the surrounding tables and chairs into pieces. The old man grunted and took a few steps back. His body swayed and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Even when Zhang Xiaoyi attacked passively and was at a disadvantage, he still couldn't win. Zhang Xiaoyi was already at the 3rd level of the true essence realm, and the strength of the battle cloud overlord body was gradually revealed. Close combat was his strength. Chapter 518. Big Brother! Duanmu Lu screamed and reached out to support Zhang Xiaoyi. Zhang Xiaoyi's face was dark purple, and blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth. It really is poison. Nie Tian sprang to his feet. Just now, when the old man made his move, he had already smelled a pungent odor. It was obviously the aura of extreme poison. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Zhang Xiaoyi was still ambushed by the old man. This old man was a LV5 true element martial artist. How shameless of him to use poison against a LV3 true element martial artist. Nie Tian came to Zhang Xiaoyi's side. Seeing that the latter's face was dark and unconscious, he quickly fed him a few elixirs. However, this only worsened his condition. Blood was flowing from his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. He looked like he was about to die. Humph! The old man smiled coldly. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, he said, Poisoned by I's 7 Fiends pill, you will die within half an hour. Antidote. Nie Tian stood up abruptly. His cold eyes locked onto the old man. He was like a raging wolf, ready to pounce at the next moment. Not only did this old man not allow people to talk back to him, he also used a deadly move. His arrogance and viciousness made one's hair stand on end. Being stared at by Nie Tian, the old man felt an inexplicable shudder. The sudden chill made him feel like he had fallen into an ice cave. However, he quickly calmed down and smiled coldly. A mere LV1 true element trash. Do you think you are worthy of asking I for the antidote? Kill him. The last 3 words were an order from the old man to the 2 martial artists behind him. The 2 martial artists behind him were not weak either. They were both at LV2 true element, stronger than Nie Tian. The old man had already seen the strength of Nie Tian and the others. In his opinion, Zhang Xiaoyi was the strongest. As long as he could get rid of him, the rest were nothing. Swoosh! Whoosh! As soon as the voice fell, 2 figures flew out like lightning and attacked Nie Tian at the same time. Nie Tian's expression remained calm as he sensed the two powerful auras rushing towards him. He didn't show the slightest intention of dodging. With a slight shake of his body, two streams of vigorous sword chi surged out of his body. In the next moment, two majestic sword shadows appeared and shattered the two powerful auras. Bang! Bang! With two muffled sounds, the two figures flew out at a speed even faster than when they came, smashing through the tea house and disappearing without a trace. One move, just one move, without even using a sword, and the two second-level true element realm martial artists were sent flying. This was Nie Tian's current strength. What a terrifying sword intent! Everyone felt the surging power in Nie Tian's sword intent, and they were shocked. Nie Tian and the others were not old, but each one was more abnormal than the other. They were not even 20 years old, but they were able to directly send true element realm martial artists flying. Their terrifying talent was evident. Brat you! The old man saw Nie Tian casually defeat his two subordinates, and his eyes turned red. His face was extremely embarrassed, and he couldn't speak. Antidote. Nie Tian completely ignored him, and once again said two words coldly. He took a step forward, and his whole body released a surging sword intent that shot up to the sky. Everyone around felt the murderous intent in the sword intent, and they were all shocked. Once again experiencing the terror of Nie Tian, the old man's forehead was filled with sweat. At this moment, he immediately understood that among the four people in front of him, Nie Tian was the strongest. Just this sword intent alone was not something he could resist. Brat, do you know who I is? The old man didn't plan to hand over the antidote, and he actually smiled sinisterly, wanting to use his identity to pressure Nie Tian. I'll say it again, antidote. Nie Tian completely ignored the old man's words, and the coldness in his eyes became even more intense. The murderous intent that almost condensed into a substance shrouded the area, and everyone was terrified. The old man was enveloped by Nie Tian's murderous intent, and his heart beat wildly. Even his eyes were trembling. However, he suppressed the fear in his heart, raised his eyes and said, I am the Xian King's mansion, ah no, the Crown Prince's mansion's head steward. Do you dare to touch me? The Crown Prince's mansion's head steward. The crowd exclaimed in unison. It turned out that this old man was actually the Crown Prince's mansion's head steward. No wonder he was so protective of Wang Haoshuan, no wonder he was so arrogant, and no wonder he was so unscrupulous. The Crown Prince's mansion's head steward was indeed a powerful and intimidating identity. However, to Nie Tian this identity was useless. Not to mention a mere head steward, even if Wang Haoshuan himself was here, Nie Tian would kill him without hesitation. The second steward of the Xian King's mansion was killed by Nie Tian, who forced Wang Haoshuan to kill him personally. Wang Haoshuan became the Crown Prince, and when he achieved the Tao, even his fowls and dogs ascended to the heavens. Even the head steward was so arrogant, so how could the Crown Prince be domineering? The aura of Nie Tian's entire body increased again. He suddenly took a step forward, and an oppressive aura spread out. Swoosh! A sharp sword aura shot out like lightning, and directly left a glaring wound on the head steward's face. You dare to injure me? The head steward's expression was ugly, and he couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. In his opinion, as long as he revealed his identity, Nie Tian definitely wouldn't dare to touch him again. After all, this was Chuyang City. Wasn't provoking the Crown Prince of the Great Chu in Chuyang City courting death? However, Nie Tian's expression was as calm as usual, and his murderous intent was even stronger. This sword is a warning. Hand over the antidote now, or else the next sword will take your life. Nie Tianling said coldly, and his murderous intent was cold. Everyone felt the cold murderous intent from Nie Tian. Their faces were shocked, and their hearts were filled with doubt. They were all guessing who Nie Tian was. Knowing that the other party was the head steward of the Crown Prince's mansion, he actually didn't have the slightest intention of restraining himself. Instead, he became even more insolent. Could it be that he was a disciple of the four big clans? The head steward had the same guess as everyone else. Looking at Nye Tian's age, he was only 17 or 18 years old, but he actually had the strength of the first level of primordial spirit. His true combat ability was even more unfathomable. In the entire 3,000 small worlds, only the direct descendants of the four big clans could have such a person. Thinking of this, the head steward's entire body was drenched in sweat, and a chill ran down his back. Finally, unable to resist the fear, he took out a small bottle with trembling hands. "You eat first," Nye Tian raised his eyebrows and said coldly. The head steward didn't dare to be arrogant anymore. He took out a pill, raised his head, and swallowed it. He even opened his mouth wide for Nye Tian to check, indicating that he had really swallowed it. Nye Tian stretched out his hand, grabbed the bottle, and passed it to Duanmu Lu. Duanmu Lu fed the antidote to Zhang Xiaoyi, and after a while, the latter finally woke up. "Big brother, are you alright?" Seeing the blackness on Zhang Xiaoyi's face gradually fade, Duanmu Lu's face lit up. Nye Tian smiled faintly, and his gaze turned to the head steward. The murderous intent in his eyes didn't diminish in the slightest. This young master. Being stared at by Nye Tian, the head steward trembled all over, and said in a trembling voice, Your friend is fine now. I will take my leave." With that, he turned to leave. Chapter 519. A cold voice rang out. Although it was not loud, it was like thunder in the head butler's ears, causing his entire body to tremble. The head butler's feet felt like they were filled with lead bullets, and he could not take another step. He turned to look at Nye Tian, and did not dare to look at the youth in front of him. He trembled as he said, "Young master, what happened just now was I's fault. I had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai and offended you. Please forgive me this once on account of the great Chu Crown Prince." At this moment, the head butler was already certain that Nye Tian was a member of the four great families. Moreover, he was a direct descendant. He was definitely not someone he could afford to offend. "Forgive you." The corners of Nye Tian's mouth curled up as a playful laugh sounded. He sized up the old man before him and said coldly, "Did you think about forgiving the person whose tongue you cut just now? If I was not stronger than you, did you think about forgiving me? Just because someone else said something, you cut out his tongue. Just because my friend talked back to you, you want his life. People like you are a scourge if you live. Do you think I will forgive you?" The gloomy voice sounded like a death knell being rung by the Grim Reaper. Nye Tian was right. If he was not strong, he would have been a corpse by now. This world was cruel. Without strength, one could only be a lamb at the mercy of others. Everyone was silent in their hearts, but there was a deep smile on their faces. The head butler of the Crown Prince's residence had met a direct descendant of the four great families. Both parties had even reached a point where they would not rest until one party was dead. This was a great show to watch. When the head butler heard Nye Tian's words, his body stiffened and his knees gave way. He knelt down with a thud, looking extremely miserable. However, there was no hesitation in Nye Tian's eyes. Like a cold god, his body suddenly released a cold sword intent that shot directly at the head butler. The sword intent flashed and the head butler's body shook as he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he did not die. Only his yuan meridians were destroyed. To a martial artist, having one's yuan meridian crippled was worse than death. "Thank you, young master, for not killing me." However, the head butler felt that his life was more important. He hurriedly kowtowed in thanks. Nye Tian's eyes flickered and he sneered, "I'm only letting you live temporarily, why are you so excited? Now, take me to the Crown Prince's residence." You want to go to the Crown Prince's residence?" The head butler was stunned at first, and a complicated look appeared in his eyes. He didn't know whether it was excitement or something else. The crowd was stunned. They didn't know why Nye Tian still wanted to go to the Crown Prince's residence. Could it be that he wanted to find trouble with the new crown prince? Nie Tian snorted coldly and said brazenly, Wang Haoxuan, you're already so arrogant after being the crown prince for a day. Your days as the crown prince have come to an end. Wang Haoxuan, the new crown prince, had just been crowned yesterday, and Nie Tian had also just come out of the chaotic abyss yesterday. It could only be said that everything had its own destiny. When the head butler heard Nie Tian's words, his originally happy face suddenly stiffened, and there was a feeling of complete coldness in his heart. Lead the way, head butler. Nie Tian smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth brimming with a cold smile. The head butler led the way, and Nie Tian and the others swaggered out of the Sunrise Tea House. After a long time, the crowd looked at the gradually disappearing figures, still unable to react. That youth said that His Highness the Xian King's days as the crown prince have come to an end. What did he mean? Someone asked in a trembling voice. He can't be thinking of dethroning the new crown prince, right? Someone exclaimed. That's unlikely. Our great Chu Empire is attached to the Battle Cloud sect. Even dethroning the crown prince, apart from His Majesty the Emperor, only the sect leader of the Battle Cloud sect can do that. That youth should be a descendant of one of the 4 great clans. What right does he have to say such arrogant words? Someone analyzed in shock. The Sunrise Tea House immediately burst into an uproar. At the same time that Nie Tian left the tea house, in the Crown Prince's residence. In the spacious banquet hall, tables of banquets were laid out, and the dishes on each table were extremely luxurious. Wang Haoxuan had just been crowned crown prince yesterday, and he had invited all the aristocrats of Chuyang City to a banquet. At this time, the banquet was full of guests, and everyone toasted in unison, congratulating Wang Haoxuan on being crowned crown prince. And at the side of each table, there were beautiful maids waiting on them. Those aristocrats, all with big bellies, would take advantage of the maids from time to time, touching their cheeks and pinching their buttocks, having a lot of fun. Ah! At this time, a scream rang out, and a maid pulled away a perverted hand, shouting, What are you doing? This little girl has a fiery temper, I like it! Wanton laughter rang out, and a fat man stretched out his hand, obviously wanting to take advantage of the maid. Everyone else laughed, and they were happy to watch the show. Wang Haoxuan saw this scene from a high place, but he did not stop it. Instead, he laughed and said, Be careful, this girl is not an ordinary person, the previous crown prince's brother-in-law died because of her. The crowd was taken aback, and then immediately started jeering. Wang Haoxuan was right, because the maid who was being molested was none other than the girl that Nie Tian had saved previously, Li Jiao. When Nie Tian left the city lord's residence, he even forced Wang Haoxuan to kill the second housekeeper because of Li Jiao and the others, just for the safety of these girls. Unexpectedly, it still did not deter Wang Haoxuan. It had been more than half a year since Wang Haoxuan came out of the chaotic abyss, and the abyss had long been closed, but there had been no news of Nie Tian and the others, so he believed that Nie Tian had died in the chaotic abyss, and of course, he had no more scruples. He directly left Li Jiao and the other girls in the Xian King's residence as maids. Sigh. Yao Fik, who was sitting not far from Wang Haoxuan, frowned, shook his head slightly, and let out a long sigh. Now, he was already doubting whether he had done the right thing by rescuing Wang Haoxuan from the chaotic abyss. Xian King, Xian King. At this time, a panicked voice sounded, and a servant of the crown prince's residence rushed over. Impudent! Wang Haoxuan heard the servant's way of addressing him, and immediately flew into a rage. He directly smashed the wine cup in his hand and roared, What did you just call this crown prince? That servant immediately reacted, and immediately slapped himself, shouting as he slapped, This lowly one called you wrong, this lowly one called you wrong. Wang Haoxuan had just been conferred the title of crown prince yesterday, and most of the people in the residence were not used to it yet, so it was normal for him to call him wrong. That servant slapped himself dozens of times, and his face was bleeding. Only then did Wang Haoshuan wave his hand and said with a smile, "It's good that you know you're wrong and can change. Speak, what are you in such a hurry for?" "Reporting to your highness, there are a few people outside the door, and they seem to have kidnapped the chief housekeeper." The servant swallowed hard and said with a trembling voice, "Kidnapped the chief housekeeper." When Wang Haoshuan heard the servant's words, he suddenly stood up, and his whole body released a terrifying rage, like a venomous wolf that suddenly went berserk. Chapter 520. Wang Haoshuan stood up angrily. His eyes were filled with viciousness as he said coldly, "Tell them to come here." "This." The servant hesitated and his face darkened. "What are you waiting for?" Wang Haoshuan bellowed. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. "Yes." The servant's throat bobbed as he agreed and left dejectedly. The entire banquet fell into dead silence because of Wang Haoshuan's anger. No one dared to make a sound. The new crown prince had just taken office, and someone dared to kidnap the crown prince's residence's head butler to cause trouble. That person must have eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's gall. This time, the new crown prince was completely enraged. The crowd was shocked. No matter who the troublemaker was, he was going to be in big trouble this time. "Your Highness!" Before Wang Haoshuan could sit down, the servant who had just run out came back again. This time, he looked even more flustered. "Bastard! Why are you back?" Wang Haoshuan bellowed. His eyes were murderous. Conferring the title of Crown Prince and inviting the nobles to a banquet was the most glorious moment of his life. But this servant came again and made him lose face in front of everyone. How could he not be angry? Humph! In the next moment, a gloomy and cold laughter resounded, and then a figure staggered in before falling flat on his face. "Head butler!" Wang Haoshuan took a closer look. The person on the ground was none other than the crown prince's residence's head butler. But now, the head butler didn't look like a butler at all. He looked like a stray dog or a beggar on the street. He crawled on the ground, his body trembling, and he didn't dare to speak. Many people recognized the head butler. The shock in their hearts was written all over their faces. They didn't expect that someone would kidnap the head butler and come to the crown prince's residence to show off. Just then, a figure walked in and stepped on the head butler. He shouted, "Wang Haoshuan, you're so arrogant. I'm here now. What can you do to me?" The head butler was stepped on in front of everyone. This was stepping on Wang Haoshuan's face. When the crowd saw the person's face, they were even more surprised. It was a young man. Nia Tian. When Wang Haoshuan saw the face that appeared in front of him, his pupils suddenly constricted. The shock and fear in his heart were magnified infinitely through his eyes. He stuttered out, "You're still alive?" That's right, he wasn't mistaken. The person who suddenly appeared in front of him and ruined his moment of glory was Nia Tian. Never in his wildest dreams would Wang Haoshuan have imagined that Nia Tian was still alive. He saw with his own eyes that Nia Tian and the others were cut up by the spiky magic scorpion. How could the latter still survive? Unreasonable, completely unreasonable. Although he didn't see the scene of Nia Tian dying with his own eyes, Wang Haoshuan was sure that Nia Tian wouldn't have had the slightest chance of survival in that situation. Moreover, the chaotic abyss had already been closed for half a year. Even if Nia Tian had survived, how did he get out? Wang Haoshuan could not understand everything. Nia Tian? Tianluo City Lord Nia Tian? Isn't he dead? At this moment, everyone came to their senses and looked at Nia Tian with even more astonishment. It was as if they had seen a ghost. Nia Tian was considered a not insignificant figure in the 3,000 small world. Half a year ago, he didn't come out of the chaotic abyss. At that time, it was widely rumored that he had died in the chaotic abyss. Who would have thought that this person who had been dead for half a year would suddenly appear again? "Your Highness, you really want me to die, don't you?" Nia Tian stared at Wang Haoshuan. The aura around his body was ice cold. He actually released a cold-killing intent without any scruples. Cold. a coldness that penetrated the soul. The unbridled killing intent was released. Everyone felt their bodies shiver from the cold. Wang Haoshuan listened to Nie Tian's words. That Your Highness didn't feel good at all. Instead, he felt the killing intent enveloping his whole body. Nie Tian City Lord, Wang Haoshuan finally came to his senses. His brain began to work. His eyes were filled with deep fear. When he opened his mouth to speak, his whole body was trembling. Who do you think you are? Nie Tian directly interrupted Wang Haoshuan. He had already noticed the maids at the banquet and recognized a few of them. At this time, the anger in his heart completely erupted. His eyes were filled with killing intent. He scolded, "A scum like you is not fit to be the crown prince." Bang! As his voice fell, Nie Tian suddenly exerted force with his foot. A muffled sound suddenly erupted in the hall. The chief steward under his foot was directly trampled into a pool of blood. He died on the spot. The brutal and bloody scene caused the entire banquet to fall into a deathly silence. Everyone's expressions froze, their eyes dazed. The dignified chief steward of the crown prince's residence died just like that? He died at the crown prince's banquet. Wang Haoshuan's face stiffened. He felt an explosion in his head. The shock made him dizzy. His body swayed and he actually almost fell. The chief steward of the crown prince's residence was trampled to death in front of him. His first reaction wasn't anger, but fear. Fear of despair. At this time, countless black-clothed martial artists appeared, each one filled with murderous intent. As soon as Wang Haoshuan gave the order, they would all rush forward. The strength of these martial artists was not weak. All of them were at the true essence first stage to the true essence fifth stage. They were the crown prince's henchmen. As the saying goes, soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. Now was the time for them to prove their worth to Wang Haoshuan. But what was strange was that Wang Haoshuan was so scared that his face turned ashen. His expression was muddled and he didn't look like the crown prince at all. He didn't even give the order to kill Nie Tian. Your Highness the Crown Prince, this person is too arrogant. He actually dares to act presumptuously in the Crown Prince's residence. He is simply courting death. A voice suddenly sounded. It was the fat man who had previously molested Li Jiao Er. Courting death. Nie Tian didn't even look at this person. He directly raised his hand and a trace of sword intent flew out. Blood splashed in the air as the fat man's head fell to the ground. Kill him! At this time, no one knew who shouted. The aura of dozens of black-clothed martial artists suddenly skyrocketed. They actually wanted to attack. Nie Tian wasn't afraid of these people. His body shook and a surging sword intent soared into the sky. With his current strength, he could defeat dozens of true essence realm martial artists by himself. Who dares to move? Just as Nie Tian was about to start a massacre, a figure suddenly flashed behind him. It was Zhang Xiaoi. He flashed a black token in his hand and shouted, "Battle Cloud Token." The black-clothed martial artists saw the token in Zhang Xiaoi's hand and exclaimed. The other people at the banquet were stunned, and their faces were filled with shock. Who was this person? Why did he have a battle cloud token? Zhang Xiaoi. The others didn't know Zhang Xiaoi, but Wang Haoshuan did. Zhang Xiaoi sneered and said in a loud voice, "I am the young sect master of the Battle Cloud sect. Whoever dares to move will be the enemy of the Battle Cloud sect." The loud voice shocked everyone. The black-clothed martial artists were horrified and subconsciously retreated. City Lord Nie Tian. Just as everyone was retreating, a figure took the initiative to stand up and greet Nie Tian. Chapter 521. Yao Fei took the initiative to step forward and looked at Nie Tian, seemingly thinking about something. Martial uncle. Wang Haoshuan was extremely emotional when he saw Yao Fei step forward and actually burst into tears, as if he had seen his father who had been missing for many years. Zhang Xiaoi used the name of Battle Cloud sect to suppress everyone. Even if Wang Haoxuan gave the order at this time, probably no one would dare to make a move against Nie Tian and the others. Wang Haoxuan was practically a dead man. If there was anyone who could save his life at this moment, there was only one person, Yao Feiku. Yao Fei was not a person of the Great Chu Empire. The most important thing was that his identity was special. He was a Spirit Array Master of the Spirit Array Master Guild, and he himself was the third Spirit Array Master on the Spirit Array Master ranking. All these titles added together. His status was not even lower than the Sect Master of Battlecloud Sect. Yao Feiku stood up, obviously wanting to save Wang Haoxuan's life. Unfortunately, before he spoke, Nie Tian spoke a step ahead of him. Nie Tian's gaze swept over Li Jiaoer and the other girls. Each of them had tear stains on their faces, delicate and pitiful, so out of place in this festive banquet. This scene made Nie Tian firm in his heart. Wang Haoxuan must be killed. Mr. Yao, this matter has nothing to do with you. Please don't get involved. Nie Tian's cold gaze flashed on Yao Feiku, and his words did not have the slightest scruple about the latter's identity. His expression was asking Yao Feiku not to intervene, but the underlying meaning was that even if Yao Feiku intervened, it would be useless. He would definitely kill Wang Haoxuan. Yao Feiku's expression stiffened slightly, his gaze locked on Nie Tian, and did not speak for a long time. He heard a thick sense of threat from Nie Tian's words. It had been a long time since someone dared to speak to him like this. He had almost forgotten this feeling of being threatened. Everyone's eyes were focused on Yao Feiku, waiting for his reaction. Everyone's heart was in their throats, and they did not dare to breathe loudly. Yao Feiku's next move was crucial to Wang Haoxuan and Nie Tian. If he insisted on protecting Wang Haoxuan, then there would only be a battle. If he gave up, then Wang Haoxuan would definitely die. Just a few seconds ago, no one dared to believe that Nie Tian had the courage to kill Wang Haoxuan. But now, when they saw how hesitant Nie Tian was, they knew that Nie Tian was not someone to be trifled with. After a few seconds of silence, Yao Feik finally spoke again. There was a hint of disappointment in his voice as he said, Nie Tian City Lord, are you sure you want to kill him? Nie Tian didn't say anything and just nodded lightly. His whole body was filled with an extremely cold, killing intent. What if he gives up the title of Crown Prince? Yao Feiku's eyes trembled as he asked. Yes. Nie Tian City Lord, Lord Nie Tian, I give up my position as the Crown Prince. I don't want to be the Crown Prince anymore. In order to preserve his life, Wang Haoxuan was willing to give up the position of Crown Prince in order to survive this calamity. Unfortunately, both he and Yao Feiku had underestimated Nie Tian's determination to kill. The result will be the same. Death. Nie Tian suddenly raised his head, and the coldness in his eyes became even sharper. Since he came to the Crown Prince's residence and let Nie Tian see the scene at the banquet, it was heaven's will to kill Wang Haoxuan. There was no room for negotiation. Not to mention Yao Feiku, even if the Great Chu Emperor came, Wang Haoxuan would still die. Nie Tian City Lord, you've gone too far by doing this. Yao Feiku frowned slightly. There was a hint of anger in his eyes as he said coldly, Nie Tian City Lord, you left these girls in the Crown Prince's residence. His Highness did not treat these girls according to your request. It's wrong. But this matter is nothing compared to His Highness's status, right? They're just a few girls from an ordinary family. Moreover, you have no relationship with them. At most, you've only met them once. Just because of them, you want the Great Chu Crown Prince to pay with his life. Don't you think it's ridiculous? His articulate voice fell, and the surrounding officials and dignitaries all nodded in agreement. In the eyes of these people, how could the lives of a few girls be compared to the high and mighty Great Chu Crown Prince? Even if Wang Haoxuan killed them, it wouldn't be a great crime, much less making them his maids. Ridiculous? Nie Tian's eyebrows suddenly rose. He looked at Yao Feiku with killing intent. He had talked to Yao Feik a few times in the Chaos Abyss, and he had a good impression of him. However, his words just now had completely destroyed the only good impression he had of Yao Feik. Yao Feiku. Nie Tian called out the other's name. He pointed at one of the maids and said, "They were raised by their parents. Why do you think their lives are lower than the great Chu Crown princes? If the person kneeling on the ground serving this group of pigs and dogs was your daughter, would you still find it ridiculous? If your daughter was wantonly humiliated, would you still be indifferent? Laughable. How dare you say that? I think the most ridiculous person is you." Nie Tian didn't give Yao Feiku any face and reprimanded him. Yao Fei's face flickered with anger as he saw Nie Tian's stern expression, as if he were teaching him a lesson. He was a spirit array master, and had always been revered by others. When had he ever been reprimanded like this? Nie Tian saw Yao Feiku's uncertain expression and said cold, "Mr. Yao, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't interfere. There are some things you can't control and some people you can't save. Don't bring trouble upon yourself." Yao Feiku's heart trembled. A hint of viciousness flashed in his eyes as he said cold, "What if I insist on interfering? Then let's fight." Nie Tian answered without hesitation. Even though Yao Feiku was a rank 6 spirit array master and had reached the 9th level of true element, Nie Tian wasn't afraid. Fight? Yao Feiku's eyes turned cold as he said, "Nie Tian, do you really think this master is afraid of you? I am a member of the Spirit Array Master Guild, the 3rd-ranked Spirit Array Master in the 3000 small world. Not to mention the young sect master of the Battle Cloud sect. Even if the sect master of the Battle Cloud sect came personally, he would have to show some respect to me. You are just the Lord of Heaven Luo City. I respect you as a genius and call you Lord of the City. If I don't respect you, you are nothing in my eyes. Even if I kill you now, no one will dare to cause trouble for me." Yao Feiku's expression was agitated. He completely tore apart all pretense of cordiality with Nie Tian. "No one will dare to cause trouble for you?" Nie Tianling smiled coldly and said, "Are you sure?" Yao Feiku thought too highly of his status. He thought that the Spirit Array Master Guild was invincible. Not to mention others, as long as Frenzied Blade Yi Linyun knew that he killed Nie Tian, he would definitely destroy the entire Spirit Array Master Guild. However, Nie Tian didn't have time to chat with him. Even if he didn't borrow the strength of others, he wasn't afraid of Yao Feiku. Although Nie Tian was only at the 1st level of True Element, he currently had 4 rank 4 star souls in his hands. He had never used a rank 4 star soul before. It was a good chance to test its power on Yao Feiku. Yao Feiku also thought of Frenzied Blade Yi Linyun. Since Nie Tian came out from the Chaotic Abyss, then Yi Linyun must have also come out. Frenzied Blade was a madman who didn't even put the 4 great clans in his eyes. Would he be afraid of a mere Spirit Array Master Guild? Obviously not. Thinking of this, Yao Feiku hesitated.